Someone once said that an unhappy union is doomed forever. This had to be true in some sense. Such an inevitable connection is not at all necessary for a person. The main character asks in surprise what Dianelle is doing here. A significant day has come since getting into the novel. The man began to be called a monster because of his ability to transform into a monster in the book The Monster Prince. The boy received this because of Kalia's curse. The day came when he received the kiss of the main character. The girl wanted to check whether the curse would disappear after a kiss and return home without interfering with her friend. This man left his girlfriend 13 years ago without even trying to say goodbye. Daisy straightens her hair out of extreme nervousness as she asks how the prince has fared all these years at the castle. It seems that it is because he is the main character that he has become such an attractive young man. The young man has changed a lot, but the lady tries not to remember what he was like when they just started becoming friends. Daisy has only recently healed the wounds he left behind. You can't change the past, so it's better to walk away. Turning around, the beauty mumbles something about leaving, but she is stopped almost immediately. There is concern in his gaze. Lowering his head, the man asks why he is being left alone. It's undeserved. The boy almost begs to take him with him and promises that he doesn't care where they go as long as they are together. The hero cannot come to terms with being left completely alone, just like then. The woman tries to push away the body that is hugging her. 13 years ago, everything was the other way around, and they left her. It was Daisy who said that she would feed, shelter, and help if something went wrong. It seems to be true. When his girlfriend left, the prince thought only about this. The time has come to deliver what we promised without delay. 14 years ago, a girl got into a romance about which she left many unflattering comments because of the cliches. It was possible to understand the essence very quickly because she looked in the mirror, realizing that she looked like Daisy from the cover. Silver hair, dull blue eyes, and white hair. The heroine was younger than in the picture, but overall exactly the same. The heroine was the adopted daughter of the witch Kalia. Together they tormented Dianelle, who could not escape. The witch kidnapped the young prince and cast a curse that turns the hero into a monster. She used it to obtain magical energy. The future king gave her soul energy after absorbing plants. Before extracting the magic, the woman forced her daughter to give poison. But after eating, Dianelle turned into a monster and went out of control. The girl could not disobey, so she continued to follow orders. No one knew that the man was a prince, because he lived alone and finally completely disappeared from memory. I had to spend every day in suffering until the light of the main character appeared. The woman was not afraid of her friend, even when he changed his appearance and took care of his wounds. Dianelle was touched by the girl's kindness and opened his heart to her. They fell in love, sealing their feelings with a kiss, and this is what lifted Dianelle's curse. He returned to the palace where he was crowned. Having become a high-ranking person, the young man immediately executed Kalia and, of course, Daisy too. No one knows that the baby obeyed orders and herself became a victim of her mother. Initially, the witch adopted the girl to test a method of extracting energy. The main character is finished because she ended up in a novel. I want to scream out of despair. The blonde promises never to write bad comments. The door swings open. The woman screams that she asked to sit quietly, and yes, this is a witch. As expected, she is beautiful, just like in the novel, but there is no time to admire. The child asks to let her go, addressing Mom. Kalia shouts that her friend must be out of her mind. The witch never saw Daisy as a daughter. Falling to her knees, the blonde asks for forgiveness. The interlocutor orders to contact her again, but correctly. Since nothing comes to mind, the lady calls her Madam. It seems that the option is wrong, because the heroine flares up with anger. The end has come, but the morning has come. Grabbing her head, the girl tries to remember what exactly happened earlier. Having said the wrong words, the maiden remembers a strong gust of wind but cannot believe that the child was brought to such a state. What comes to mind is that Kalia was called Miss Witch. It's a pity that this didn't happen a few hours earlier. The blonde still doesn't understand what the difference is between the two names, but there's still no way out. The door opens sharply again. The woman notices that the ward has finally come to her senses. As she greets Miss, she hears her mother's joy. I was lucky that I managed to remember the correct option, at least in the morning. The lady is heading to the capital. Daisy is stupid, but has not yet lost her memory to forget the main thing. Throwing the bag, the witch reminds about the poisonous plant. It's worth going to the shack to feed the freak. Starting to get angry because of the slowness, the woman orders him to get ready and hit the road. The mother is going to meet with Gelfus, but the mood is ruined for almost the whole day in advance. The heroine's lover is Gelfus Viscon Orsenium. He is the son of an overseas concubine and was born with little energy. In Orsenium, power was measured by the amount of strength, so the guy turned out to be a useless heir. The unwanted prince became an excellent victim for the greedy witch, who needed it. 9 years ago, when Gelfus was 14 years old, he was thrown into the forest, which of course was a setup. Kalia knocked the guy unconscious while he was walking, and then appeared innocent from behind a tree. Virgo set everything up to make it seem like she wanted to help, even if in fact she had her own plans. The man fell in love with the lady at first sight and asked to go with him to the palace, although this was impossible. The brunette said that she also loves, but she can't because she's actually a witch. Everyone has heard about the hunt for such people. The Virgin was sure that after becoming emperor, the road would be open to her. Viscount said he didn't have enough energy. The woman promised that she would come up with something to achieve her goal. After the conversation, the Empress became pregnant with Dianel, who possessed an incredible amount of strength. For the witch, the boy was a hindrance because he was going to use Gelfus to gain power over the empire. The Virgin stole the baby immediately after birth and cursed him. The heroine must not torture the young man on the orders of his mother. Otherwise, she will be executed. The most important thing is to make friends. Kalia will return from the capital in a couple of days, so the time has come. You need to meet with Dianel, but then you won't be able to feed him this poisonous plant. It will be easier to make friends if the guy is well fed. Virgo grabs the bag that she needs to take with her. There was some bread inside, but it was already quite stale. This is better than having nothing at all. To get to the place, you must first go through the dogs that stand right at the entrance to the hut. Cerberus doesn't even listen to a witch, so perhaps something like this will be unrealistic. Virgo can drive them away by spraying poison. If you then go to the boy like that, then he too will feel unwell because animals cannot stand the smell. I would like to believe in the best, but it seems that the beauty will die on the way to Dianel, and then the final end will come. The girl was walking through the forest, but tripped and fell into a puddle. She is afraid that the poison will wash away, and the dogs followed her the whole time. Tears flow down your cheeks. It was not even possible to meet the prince, but instead of horror, Cerberus licks his lips. One of them throws a pine cone into his hands and then carefully watches how the baby moves it from side to side. It became clear that they just wanted to play, and for that matter, the lady promises that she will play enough with them. The prince appeared when the moon rose. The girl sleeps next to the monster, but he will not allow the innocent child to be used. The young man was almost attacked by a hawk. It's just a monster that he killed, but he can't eat it either. The blonde wakes up. She looks at him with a look of admiration, talking about how cool it was. The first step to survival is asking for forgiveness. The heroine falls to her knees, saying that she did evil not of her own free will. There is no point in asking for forgiveness, so all that remains is to ask for a second chance to use. The second step is offering food. The Virgin holds out a loaf of bread, smiling. She brought this as a gift. Daisy is sure that even in this world the way to a person's heart is through the stomach, but that was not the case. The man orders the food to be removed, but the girl does not give up, saying that although it is stale, it can be eaten without dry food. Throwing away what was proposed, the brunette tries to restrain himself, but his voice begins to break mercilessly, which makes him scared. The Virgin was also hungry, but did not eat the bread, only to offer it to her friend. Her hopes were dashed. This is the fault of Kalia's daughter. The prince asks to remove it, but they did not listen to him, and now the end has come. The story mentioned that the baby can turn into a monster due to excitement. Disobedience is to blame for everything. The young man orders him to run away, but his legs do not obey his mistress at all. Transforming into a panther, the baby jumps straight onto the beauty's body, causing her to fall to the floor in surprise. The fangs are still very small, so there was no point in being scared. A smile appears on your face from what is happening. The words will have to be taken back, because the hero sinks his teeth into his hand. It's getting unpleasant. It wasn't that difficult considering what was going on, but that means it shouldn't be much of a problem anyway. The angrier Dianel was, the more ferocious the monster became. This only became clear now in practice. Kalia and Daisy constantly bullied the boy, so the boy they saw was the wildest version. The woman doesn't know what to do, so she grabs stale bread as if it's the last chance she'll have. Having been stunned and turned back, the boy does not understand why he is so warm. He doesn't remember anything similar. His Highness must be cold, so the blonde covers him with a cape for good measure. It was the lady who lit the fire, because it would not have worked for the guy due to the curse. She also found a blanket. Instead of being friendly, the brunette starts screaming, asking who she is and why she thinks she's a new friend. I would like to know what the beauty is trying to achieve, but she does not understand what we are talking about, because she is trying to improve the relationship. The ears popped out again. Dianelle cannot be allowed to turn back into a monster that will be even more evil. The girl really came to help. There's no point in trying to bully someone who doesn't deserve it. Unable to control his anger, the future emperor jumps up and grabs the maiden's hands, asking once again what's wrong. Throwing back the baby, the young man is silent, but he is asked to apologize. She was cruel, but she only helped. The virgin also wanted to say about the hand that feeds him, because in one proverb there is something similar in context. The young man never asked for help. He's right, but he still could have at least thanked him since it happened that way. Just because Daisy helped just once doesn't mean the past was automatically forgotten. The heroine simply had no choice. If the girl did not obey, she would receive from the witch. She didn't want to be another victim. I no longer want to cause pain to others, wanting to avoid my own suffering, because this is wrong. Just because the blonde hurt the prince didn't mean she didn't have the worst heartache herself. I had to follow orders to get my mother's love, but it never happened, even with time. The witch probably left her alone because she was useful, but she hurt even when she was asked for mercy. It was not possible to die, but life was not felt. Not only Dianelle, but also Daisy, who thought that this was the end, often thought about what could be done. Kalia found out that her daughter was from the Ludkeln family long after the adoption. This family has a large supply of holy energy, but they do not know how to heal people or cast magic normally. Everyone around them judges them and perceives them as useless beings who are not important. The villain would never fall in love with a descendant, just like any other person. Kalia took her daughter to learn how to extract magical energy. Dianelle knew nothing about what was happening. He could not understand why he was bullied so mercilessly. The girl herself lived no better. For an acquaintance, what was said must have been news about which to worry. The blonde asks you to understand that it was not easy for her either, and explains that she is not lying when she speaks. A bad reaction was to be expected, but at least the boy knows the lady's situation. It's better to leave before the guy turns into a monster. Handing over the ointment, the heroine asks to use it. The Cerberus were waiting outside. The girl asks to be taken back to the tower, where she was until this moment. A roar is heard behind, but it's just the prince who has turned back into a human. He asks not to be left. Daisy is the witch's daughter, and no matter how much they bully her, at least she doesn't live in an abandoned shack somewhere. Surely the heroine has all the necessary medicine. She is hateful, but the hero was glad to see someone who came just to talk. Fire helps a lot because it gives off a pleasant warmth. I want to curl up in a ball. There is no longer any strength to restrain himself, so the brunette begins to cry, barely stopping. Virgo looks at the library. Ranatok managed to be at the top of the room, but you can roam wherever you want. Apparently, Kalia's magical abilities are truly the most impressive in the entire empire. The blonde would like to know why the heroine became a witch and not a magician, because they are not treated so badly. Finally, I managed to find the right book on pharmacology. The heroine knew that this would happen sooner or later. Daisy can't use magic because of her birth, but she can make medicine. The source of the Great Fairy was found on the map. I don't think anything like this was ever mentioned in the book. Now the beauty has a map, so it's time for adventure. I'm lucky that my mother is in the capital. The chance must be seized before it is too late. Virgo will ask the Cerberians to go with her. When going outside, the little girl checks the condition of the dogs. Perhaps we should give them names. One will be Tsero, the other Barrow, and the third Russ. They still have blood at their mouths. It seems they usually hunt on their own. Realizing what's what, the little girl asks to get some meat for her and the prince. The two ran away immediately, but Barrow remained. The journey towards adventure begins. The blonde feels like Princess Mononoke because she rides the dog. They stop. It seems that there is a shelter in front of them, but it is quiet. It is not clear who needed to go to the abandoned forest. While trying to get down, Daisy plans to look around. The number of things is dizzying. Almost immediately, the main character collects as many things as possible. Each find is unique in its own way. Cerberus was more successful and found a bag that is truly a treasure with wonderful things inside. The folding knife can be given to the prince. In an abandoned shack, a thing can last a very long time. Ciro and Russ have probably finished hunting by now, so the baby climbs onto Barrow's back. It's time for them to go back. The maiden stopped at the waterfall and only then came to the hut. There they shouted at her and forced her to get away. Just the sight of a friend turns a baby into a monster. He asks for what vile purpose the lady came this time. His Highness mutters something, but the lady notices a jar of ointment. It appears that it was never used. The young man is reprimanded by an innocent child. She said to use it, but no one listened. The girl noticed that the prince was injured, so she grabbed his hand and began to apply the liquid. Everything must pass. It seems as if they were up to something strange again. But the wound, on the contrary, began to heal very quickly. The lady is not evil. This is a witch's ointment, so of course it will be effective until the end. The witch herself would not have given this, so she had to steal it. The lady wouldn't care even if her daughter got infected. The brunette can't believe that the heroine treats her friend's wounds this way. It turns out they're in a pretty similar situation. Daisy's wounds were indeed terrible before the new person entered the body. The lady can get a new jar, so the future emperor can use as much as he needs. The boy does not want to use what was made by the hands of the very person who is torturing him. There's no point in refusing. The blonde convinces that this necessary thing will save the world. One can only imagine how angry Madame will be when she finds out that her medicine was stolen by those whom she hates the most. The woman will be terribly angry, so the hero says that he will use as much as he wants. The girl has something else. She opens the door and drags the carcass of some animal inside. Virgo knew that her friend would like the gift. This meat will be lunch for both of them after cooking. Perhaps over time the young man will understand that the blonde is a good person. She rummages through her bag. Handing over a small bottle, the lady says that it is pure water from the spring. I had to try my best. Now the heroine promises to bring delicious food and clean water, and also to light a fire so that it won't be so scary. Of course, you shouldn't trust Daisy right away, but she asks you to observe her actions in order to understand more. Sighing, the brunette seems to nod. He asks who knows how to cut up an antelope for cooking. The little girl shakes her head in denial. It's unclear how she was going to cook something delicious without even knowing anything. The girl does not believe that her friend is going to cut up an antelope right where they are. If the heroine is afraid, then it is better to go play outside. It seems that she is too annoying because the expression on the young man's face speaks for itself. An idea comes to mind. The heroine almost forgot that she brought with her the knife that she found. Just about to hand over the little thing, Daisy freezes at what she sees and begins to scream. She's incredibly scared. The woman was too noisy, so the boy showed ears and a tail. He is clearly annoyed, so the heroine covers her mouth with her hands. Promising that she won't scream anymore, she nods but doesn't hold back and reaches for her tail, which is too soft. The girl is sorry that she did everything exactly like that, because she didn't realize it. I want to start apologizing. It is not clear what to do next and where to run. The prince surprises because he assures that everything is fine. The man reminds that the little girl promised to give something, but simply forgot. After handing over the item, you should wait outside. Virgo was able to make friends with the main character. She sits and looks at the food while they ask her how they managed to start the fire. His Highness is not going to repeat himself twice, so he simply waves his hands away, saying that it is not important. As it turns out, Cerberus can make fire. This is the safest option you can think of. Russ has the weakest fire, so he agreed to help every time without any delay. Daisy is much better than Dianelle. Because of the curse, he cannot do even basic actions. Among all the spells that Kalia used, there was one that prevented her from living a normal life. Because of this, the boy cannot start a fire on his own, and it goes out as soon as... The guy lived an unhappy childhood in a shack without a fire. It is unclear how a woman could use such a spell against a child who did not deserve it. On top of all this, it was impossible to leave the room because of another spell. Bringing his girlfriend out of her thoughts, the hero wonders why he is constantly called His Highness. He is a prince, but at any moment he can turn into a monster. This does not cause the person to lose his title. No matter how a man looks, he does not become someone else, because he remains himself, simply in a different form. The thought sounds quite deep, but the brunette believes that it is difficult to carry on a conversation with such a person. Asking to add wood to the fire so that it does not go out, the young man breaks the board. He is an exhausted child. But where does this strength come from? It is also unclear where the prince learned to cut an antelope so skillfully. The girl blinks her eyes in surprise because she doesn't understand how. The shish kebab is ready and it's incredibly delicious. It seems to the young man that the beauty brought meat because she herself wanted to eat too. The virgin was worried that her friend would have to eat alone and wanted to keep such a person company. Food is always better in company, so the blonde also decided to enjoy it as a sign of respect. Turning away, the young man smiles slightly. He is sure that it would be delicious even without a girlfriend. The boy began to smile more often, which is already better. He makes you continue to eat and remove the stupid smile from your face. Daisy takes a few pieces and says that she is going to feed the Cerberus. They are also hungry. Starting to say something about the safety of the meat, the interlocutor quickly runs away, leaving the guy completely alone. The girl has eaten a lot and is lying down, resting. The hero ate with pleasure, but now he plays hard to get, saying that he liked everything, but in some cold tone that confuses. You definitely shouldn't expect more from a 9-year-old. Virgo is an adult, so you need to be patient and then everything will be better. Getting up, the blonde is about to say goodbye because she needs to take medicine from the tower. It is not necessary, but only a friend thinks so. Bowing, the heroine asks if the prince hoped that she would not leave, and his face shows that embarrassment overtook him almost immediately. If the girl continues to behave this way, then it's better to get away. It was stupid to hope for anything even now. The girl promises that she will return tomorrow. There is no point in liking her, because in her thoughts, she actually had a good plan. With these words, she runs outside the hut. It's like a promise, albeit a one-sided one, that will definitely be fulfilled, no matter what. This was said simply like that, but then the main character did not even suspect that the promise she made would be impossible to fulfill, no matter how hard she tried to do something. What is done must be careful, because for someone, it can become an incurable wound. The girl jumps on Barrow, who immediately sets off. As soon as they were at the tower, the girl thanks her friend for her help and runs to the meeting place. They had a good time with the prince and ate plenty, and Kalia is not in the tower, so there is no one to fear. It seems that the day has officially become the calmest one yet, while the maiden was in Daisy's body, and it makes you want to smile. A dark voice makes you shrink as soon as the door opens, and it sends an unpleasant chill right through your body. The heroine is asked where she has been. The woman notices the wonderful cape her daughter is wearing. It seems to have been made from one of the dresses of a mother who was in town. This voice is already very familiar, so you want to run much further until you have no strength left. The baby has skillful hands since she decided to do something like this, and so skillfully redesigned the clothes. With fear in her eyes and problems with stuttering, the girl quietly says that she only thought that they wanted to throw away the little thing. She had no bad intentions, and knowing what could happen, she would never touch things. Kalia quickly gets tired of vile excuses that have absolutely no use for her. She grabs the neck of her blouse and pulls her interlocutor towards her. The voice gets lower as she asks where the baby has been. After no response comes a scream. Typically, a witch has snow-white hair with black tips. Just a couple of years ago, her hair was completely black, but she had been a witch for so long that with age her hair turned white due to evil spells and other underground things. Conversion could not be avoided, so I had to accept it. The hair is a normal color and also beautiful, so there are no problems with this. But in moments of rage, everything changes 360 degrees. The girl cannot control herself, so the color of her hair turns bright red, and this color is more like the blood of the enemies whom she managed to curse. It was a kind of sign that symbolized donating one's blood to a fallen god to gain strength for battle. Daisy, who ended up in this body, remembers it perfectly only because of the book she read. But this does not change the situation, because it remains exactly as terrible as at the very beginning. Obviously, the woman's rage is beginning to get out of control, and this only means the worst for her daughter. Inside, the reader wants to scream because she hates the fact that there are so many hot-tempered characters in this story who cannot be calmed down. The heroine feels like her question is being ignored, so she lights up even more, no longer trying to say anything. A spark ignites in the hand, and from there a long red sword is formed, which is ready to seal the beauty's fate. The sorceress asks for the last time what she said a little earlier, because she must know where her daughter was, if not in the tower, as she promised. She gives off the aura of a villainess, which makes her feel bad. Even the weapon itself emits terrible energy, which means the rescue will fail. Deciding to at least try to save herself, the blonde falls to her knees and lowers her head to the floor, begging for forgiveness. She was with the prince and went there only to collect magical energy. The excuse seems pretty plausible considering what's going on. The next question relates to the dress, because it was still taken without permission. There is a way out even in this case, because the girl says that the thing was lying on the floor, chewed up by rats. Surprise appears on the witch's face, but she quickly changes the subject, asking about the power she wants to get. The baby turns away, trying to hide her eyes, in which everything is visible. It turned out that it was not possible to collect the energy, and this happened because the prince resisted too violently. The mother is not going to believe this, so she lifts the girl's chin with her shoe. While the woman was in the capital, her daughter learned to lie vilely, without even blushing with shame. The untruth was noticed only because the heroine does not smell of a poisonous plant, which was usually left in a bag in order to do something with it in the shack. There is fear in the heroine's eyes, which now comes out due to the horror of the witch's voice. He says that the naughty one must be punished, and one can only hope that what they do to her next will not be too painful to the point of death. The girl lies on the floor, still remaining conscious, but hoping that the pain will go away soon. Daisy is a tough nut to crack because even after everything that has happened, she still finds some strength to think. It is unclear how long the sorceress raised her arms and legs to beat her, but it would not have changed anything. Surely Kalia had beaten the beauty before, but she always endured to the last and tried to survive. It was difficult, given all the problems, but it seems there was always a way out. I can't believe that the little girl survived everything that happened against her, will only to then be killed by the main character in front of the people along with her stepmother. It seems that they are both unhappy to about the same extent, because childhood is not supposed to be like that, but happy. Something sparkles in the distance. The heroine does not immediately understand what exactly is there, but after a while an idea comes to her head. It seems to be cough syrup, which makes it clear what's in the witch's head. She did not intend and is not going to kill the heroine just like that, because she is still needed for her plans. Obviously, the lady will have no one to use to extract magical energy from the prince, which can lead to bad consequences and the fact that the supply will stop, and the young man will simply be able to get out, regardless of the barrier that was put up. The girl does not understand what will happen next, because she does not want to spoil the life of even the prince and feed him poisonous plants. But in any case, there is no choice. So the next step is the most important. The lady opens the bottle so that the menthol smell instantly enters the nose, immediately bringing the jar to her lips. Daisy tastes the syrup and finds that the potion is somewhat reminiscent of the syrup from the world she came from. This brings with it memories from a past life, which now seems simply different compared to what is happening. The girl does not understand what is happening because everything is swimming before her eyes. She falls to the floor and tries to come to her senses, but nothing comes of it. Drinking the contents was obviously a mistake because, in addition to relief, the situation seems to have become many times worse than before. It seemed that the mother decided to take pity and gave him medicine, but perhaps it was poison, judging by the strangeness of the feelings. In the story, Kalia did not kill Daisy, so it is very difficult to understand what will happen next, despite the fact that it gets worse and worse. The gases are so heavy that it is becoming increasingly difficult to continue to fight to keep them closed. It feels like if the heroine loses consciousness, something terrible will happen, from which there is no way to escape if you sleep. The hand falls limply, deprived of any movement and strength. Thoughts about Dianelle come to mind, and how she herself promised that she would return back very soon. Making such a promise was a mistake, because the boy must now be sitting and waiting for his friend all alone, while she lies on the cold floor, not knowing what to do next. I would like to call His Highness, who perhaps could help, but this is unrealistic. It feels like the body is being immersed under cold water several meters down immediately. It seems that the girl dies not at the hands of the main character, but at the hands of a witch. It is impossible to believe that the heroine fell into the body of the witch's daughter and will now die so pitifully. Sometimes reality is unfair, but you have to believe that every action happens because it needs to. I don't want to believe that everything has come to such a terrible moment. The Virgo sinks further and further to the bottom, not realizing what to do next, although in reality she is not drowning. This is a punishment, thanks to which one realizes that there was no need to write bad comments about the poem that the author created according to his own vision. Writing stories without cliches is very difficult, and this only became clear now, after living a piece of the life of one of the characters. The body seems to sink to the very bottom, because it seems as if the sand under the body is really real. The girl jumps up sharply. Through half-closed eyelids, she saw the image of a strange woman with dark hair below her shoulders. The heroine looks around restlessly, trying to understand what is happening and why suddenly all her wounds were healed so quickly. The girl next to her looks very familiar, but her feelings do not make it clear who exactly is standing in front of her. Her eyes are not visible, which adds an incomprehensible speck to the situation. A hoarse voice cuts through almost immediately, so the heroine asks if she knows this man. Bowing her head, the Virgin asks for forgiveness for her ignorance and thanks for her salvation. She understands that she needs to act first, but nothing seems to change, because only silence will win back. I would like to know the name of the beauty, but she is no longer nearby, although she was right in front of her just a second ago. Mooing something in her sleep, the blonde thanks again and again for saving her life and tries to stretch out her hands. Kalia, standing nearby, raises an eyebrow in surprise, saying that she saved her daughter with the help of an antidote, so she does not understand why she is calling someone from the outside. The same jar is in his hands. The heroine picked her up from the floor and now smiles mockingly, asking why the girl drank what she was given. You can't stuff down everything you see without a choice, because there might actually be poison in there, which will then destroy you. This time it didn't end very badly. The infuriating descendant of the Ludkelns is not behaving at all as he should. The answer never comes, so the witch gets bored. Turning, the figure slowly moves away to go about its business, while the beauty continues to lounge in bed and smile stupidly at something in her mind. After a few days, everything became completely fine, and the lady no longer felt as if she had almost been killed. Kalia was not happy, because her daughter's illness gave her too many worries that were not on her to-do list. Finally, you can move on to the rest of the plan. The girl whined so much, as if she was about to throw herself away. But in fact, it was the witch who saved her, who, of course, is now the best. After the incident, the baby should be even more obedient than before, and not try to behave too cheekily. The girl nods actively, saying that she will do everything that is required of her. Somewhere in her soul, she is incredibly angry that this happened to her, because it was the fault of the witch herself, who is now pretending to be a benefactor. Today, the beauty must work hard, and if she disobeys again, next time it will only be worse. Nodding again, the main character briefly reaches into her bag just to show off all the necessary things for the hike. This time she took with her a poisonous scent, which she uses to extract magical energy from the boy in the shack. The witch becomes angrier than before, so if the blonde has finished with all the preparations, she better get away. Nodding her head, the little girl turns around and heads towards the door. She doesn't see the woman's expression behind her, but she chooses to ignore it. 10 minutes have passed since the lady set off. During this time, we managed to go quite far, so Kalia probably won't see what will happen next, which, of course, is for the better. The scent of poison is so strong that we first had to figure out how to get rid of it. The girl deliberately fell into a puddle and rolled around there thoroughly so that the smell would completely evaporate. Approaching the tree, she orders the Cerberus to go outside, and they immediately appear as usual, joyful and wagging their tails from seeing their new owner who has returned. The kids know how to behave in front of the villainess, so they didn't burn down their office. Of course, each of them deserves to be patted on the head and caressed. Barrow tries to lick the girl while she is hugging, because there is still water on her that has not had time to dry or soak into her clothes. One of the dogs grabs the heroine by the collar, as if hinting that she should quickly climb onto her back. By doing the right thing, the girl ends up where she should be and points her hand forward. They are going to the prince, and all three already know the path they have to take. Miss is still worried, because she promised that she would come the next day, but she arrived only a week later, which can cause a wave of anger and turn into a monster. Perhaps the baby had been waiting for a new girlfriend all this time, and he was sad from the realization that he had been abandoned. A memory pops up in my head of how the brunette got angry almost every time the girl came to visit him. He was probably even glad that the heroine didn't come, because otherwise she would have irritated him greatly. The prince's address always made him upset, because even on the last day, when the baby left, he was not even going to say goodbye in return, not knowing that she would disappear. It's a little unfair, even though the blonde was unwell for a week due to the poison. The main character cannot care about some minor character who is absolutely no different. He should only care about the main character who has not yet appeared. Realization hits my head, because now it has become clear who exactly came in the dream and gave me a chance for salvation. That woman with beautiful long black hair was Selena. In the Orsinium Empire, there is a special rule that was known about, and for the plot this is a rather important condition. Ludkoln could not forget what she had read a little earlier. The rule states that only an imperial magician can perform healing, so the people of the empire think that medicine is a special type of spell, available only to such special people. They don't really know what they're saying. For some reason, Selena had the ability to get rid of any disease with just her touch. This did not fit in with the truth that every person in this world knew about. The woman could heal, although she was not a real magician, much less lived where everyone else was. Because of this, people began to call the girl a witch and discuss behind her back, giggling maliciously about her origin, even if it was as pure as possible. One day the brunette couldn't stand it and ran away into the forest. She wanted everyone to forget about the existence of such a person and for things to finally become easier. Of course, this was not an option, but in this case, everything worked into the hands, because it was there that the young lady met Dianelle, who needed help and warmth. The main character suffering from a curse and the main character hiding from accusations is truly a cliché that was so strongly condemned by the reader at the time. In any case, reading the story was more or less interesting. In the distance appeared the same hut that had become noticeable in advance. They arrived at the place, so the girl thanks Barrow for delivering her safe and sound. We can only hope that the prince will not be too angry that the baby has disappeared somewhere. Before entering, the girl tries to think of a good idea of how she should behave if the man gets angry again and turns into a monster and then attacks. The dog must be ready to take the owner and run away, because otherwise both of them will not have even a ghostly chance. The girl will run out at the speed of light if she realizes that something is threatening her. This won't end on a terrible note, so all that's left to do is stick to the plan. Nothing should happen. But the scary thing is that in case of danger, you won't even be able to use poison. Standing in front of the door on weak legs, you can only sigh. Opening the entrance, the maiden looks inside and from the threshold asks His Highness how he is doing. The boy lies on the floor in the middle of the hut, which is suspiciously dark. You can see from his face that his body is cold, and he's not feeling well at all, no matter how much he doesn't want to believe it. It is obvious that the boy is not feeling well because he is muttering something, but it is not clear what exactly. The girl touches her forehead with her palm and realizes that the man is burning all over. Panic sets in almost immediately, because it is not clear what to do in such a situation. Hands themselves reach for the bag, from where they take out a bottle of red liquid. I was lucky that I managed to take something with me just in case. Otherwise, it would have only gotten worse. Virgo doesn't know what to do next and whether the medicine will help, but it's worth a try. So she lifts the baby's body and asks him to open his mouth. You should trust her at least once. The witch's previous medicine was just as effective, and it was definitely about the ointment. Then the young man agreed, and everything worked out, so there is no point in refusing now. The liquid gets into the mouth, and the hero immediately calls the beauty a liar. The girl repeats again that the medicine will really help, but nothing comes of it, because tears slowly begin to roll down her cheeks. The brunette calls her friend a liar again and again because, having promised to come, she did not. Orsinium waited for his acquaintance for a very long time, but it seems that everything became so bad that he decided that he could be angry. Dianelle is still a child who just wants a little love and care, so you can't blame him. Now it becomes clear that we need to try our best. The hero behaved maturely, but he is only 9 years old, so there is no point in saying anything even in this case. The blonde, who is half her age, is also trying not to cry and trying to calm the young man who is left completely exhausted. Daisy was only thinking about how to save herself and now admits that she was wrong. Dianel was destined to become emperor, but she completely forgot that he would also remain a child, not even 11 years old. I am distracted from my thoughts by a man who seems to have woken up. He cries again, but not so much now, asking his friend not to go anywhere. The blonde squeezes her palm and, smiling through her tears, promises that she won't go anywhere and will be there as long as necessary. The brunette does not believe what was said only because last time he was very mistaken. The virgin will really stay nearby and will be in the shack even when the boy wakes up after resting. He needs to close his eyes and not think about anything, knowing that an important person will be nearby. This time the little girl is telling the truth and is not going to change anything. There is no need to worry about what will happen next, because sometimes it is possible to control events, which is what will happen this time. Daisy fell asleep next to him, and when the guy woke up, he didn't even understand how the girl ended up next to him. Memories come of what happened and how he behaved, sobbing, as if he had really been abandoned by someone very important. Turning away, the hero exhales with a hint of irritation. When the wave of bitterness has passed, he is not so happy about the return of his friend, because a whole week has passed since she promised to return back. The kid even thought about going to the witch's tower, but quickly realized that this was a bad idea. He tried to bypass the restriction and leave the hut, but he almost immediately became ill after several attempts. The mutterings of a girl who still hasn't come to her senses tear her out of her thoughts. She promises His Highness that she will not go anywhere else because she does not want him to get sick or suffer because of this. Mistakes happen, but it is always more important to correct them immediately. The hand tightens around his friend's fingers, even tighter. The hero catches himself thinking that he does not want to let go of the beauty, even though she is the daughter of a witch who stole him from his parents and placed him in this place with a curse. Realizing it makes it worse. The cursed daughter of a villain who bullied a guy every day evokes strange feelings, but she turned out to be the first person who lit a fire for the boy and healed the wounds that were beginning to fester. As much as I would hate to admit it, Daisy became the first and only character who was truly worried about the condition of the future emperor and was not just trying to continue the torment. She took care of such a monster without even being afraid of his appearance. Pushing his pride far away, the brunette promises himself that it will be so. This time, he will forget how they treated him by deceiving him. The blonde wakes up, stretching, but does not understand where the prince is. She remembers well how she held a warm hand that was very close and only for her. Opening her eyes a little more, the lady decides to look around. A meter away from her stands a small panther from which a strange, dark aura emanates. She doesn't seem to be dreaming about what's happening, which makes it even scarier. Realization comes instantly, and it makes you want to grab your head with your hands. His Highness has turned into a monster, but it is not clear what exactly angered him. For now, Dianel is only irritated, so he is not at the extreme stage of anyone to be afraid of. The baby turns into a human again, and all that remains of the monster are the ears and tail, which very soon will also evaporate. The blonde does not understand how a young man can turn into a monster at will if she did not know this detail before. I would like to believe that the curse has been lifted, but this is just an illusion. The hero smiles a condescending smile, not understanding how this happened, because it seems that this was an unreal part of the opera that was used. It's unclear how this happened, but even the witch's daughter has no idea what's going on. Again, if it had been filmed, the young man would not have remained in an abandoned house on the outskirts of the forest. As it turned out, sometimes he turns into a panther when he is alone or very hungry. Just as quickly as the transformation into an animal occurs, the opposite happens, into a person. To some extent, this can be controlled, except for the moments when the boy is tormented by the witch, who leaves no chance. The blonde nods her head, but suddenly sharply asks why the man is dressed. Until recently, the character was a naked panther, so it is not clear how it is possible that he remains fully clothed as soon as he again becomes a person who, as if nothing had happened, is silent. The brunette smiles, but no longer holding back, laughs a little. It seems that the friend wants to see him naked, or some other strange idea came into her head. Cheeks glow scarlet as the heroine tries to understand how everything reached the point of no return. Come to think of it, this kid had a chiseled figure in The Monster Prince, and it almost makes your mouth water. The beauty is still too small for such a thing, so the hero simply pats her on the head to drive away unnecessary thoughts. Ludköln should calm down the depraved images in his head and light a fire. It will become dark very soon, so they must find at least some light and warmth that will help them remain in a more or less comfortable state in the hut. While the lady is in her head cursing the answers she was given, the young man stops to leave another comment. For her information, he always appears clothed when transforming into a human, even if his clothes are torn to shreds due to his transformation into a panther. It would be worth remembering. I should have given up my hopes, but I still can't wrap my head around it. The little girl throws herself at the guy, screaming that there are no unnecessary thoughts in her head. The fire has been lit, and now you can sit opposite, enjoying each other's company. Virgo thinks that what is happening is extremely strange. The witch is not even looking for her daughter, although this usually happens. She said they brought the hostage's magical energy. The guy must understand correctly because the lady tried to the last not to harm His Highness. The boy had recently been feeling ill, and the character simply passed on some medicine, which helped because after drinking it, it really didn't hurt as much as before. The hero admits that at first, as soon as he drank it, he thought that he would die due to severe pain. What happened is not so important, because in the end the guy only felt good after drinking. It is normal to suffer from pain before the right medicine takes effect. Sometimes you have to wait half an hour for at least some effect to appear. Virgo tries again and again to provide evidence that everything should have worked. She recently drank it herself, so she knows what she's talking about. Only now, Dianel understands why her friend didn't come when she promised, because she was obviously sick. The sorceress learned that the baby had not brought a drop of magical power after visiting the hut, so she severely beat the body without mercy, even after the answers she received. What he heard made his heart clench with horror. The heroine whimpered in pain, so the woman decided to give a drug to help. After drinking it, Ludköln felt severe pain and even thought that she had given poison, however. In fact, this was not true, and things only began to get better over time. After a couple of days, Daisy was like a cucumber, as cheerful as usual. She may have even managed to become much healthier than she was before. There is reason to rejoice, and the prince also seems to feel better. Only after a while the result became clearly visible. Leaning back, the future king nods his head, because this is true. The contents of the jar worked as they should, and to some extent my leg, which had previously been sprained at the ankle, even stopped hurting. The girl remembers that the hero limped in the novel. She doesn't know why she didn't think about it a little earlier, and is even ashamed of it in her head, but just a little. In the novel, the main character cured the young man a little later, but nothing bad will happen if everything was fine with him a little earlier. The prince distracts by asking once again if he is sure he is not distracting the beauty from her important activities. She doesn't understand why she's being asked about this so suddenly, even though just a few minutes ago it seemed like everything was getting better. The brunette believes that he is a monster and also ugly. No one will ever love him, which makes him very sad, because he doesn't know why he needs all this. What I heard makes me want to scream questioningly, because a person like Dianel cannot say something like that in all seriousness. The boy believes that in addition to being scary, he is also lame, which already seems terrible. He doesn't perceive himself. The girl starts shouting something in objection because she doesn't think the boy is so terrible. He has no right to say that, because he really is wonderful. Asking again about his beauty, as if not believing, the hero nods his head and then smiles strangely, a sly smile that appears right on his face. He asks if the hero from the book that the friend she brought is more handsome. There are too many terrible thoughts in my head about what we might be talking about. We can only hope that this is not about the monster prince, because otherwise, then the end has come. It is not clear how one can even know about something like this. The heroine watches as the brunette reaches into his bag for a volume. The blonde already wants to ask why they started talking about the little things so suddenly, but she doesn't understand at all what it's all about. On one of the pages, a man tells his beloved that he literally adores her, and she only asks to confirm his words with a light kiss. They are drawn to each other. The baby tries to restrain herself, but she fails because her eyes literally want to pop out of her head in surprise. At the beginning of the book, there was an introduction to medicine for dummies, since it is about pharmacology. We managed to find the publication in the library in Kalaya's absence, but something was wrong here. The boy accidentally dropped his bag, which was left unattended, and everything fell out almost immediately. He asks for forgiveness for reading it without asking, but he doesn't understand whether he is really as handsome as that character from the novel. Blushing a little and straightening his hair, the hero looks away, embarrassed. Deciding how to solve the problem as quickly as possible, the beauty assures that the boy is truly wonderful, and no one the little girl knows can be compared with him. A friend is so beautiful that it is impossible not to drool over him. What is said comes out of the mouth as if by itself. The hero does not seem to understand why such a thing was said, so he simply grimaces in surprise, assuming that they want to eat him. The girl screams inside because she reproaches herself for what she said. It is too difficult to control your language, especially in moments when you are completely enveloped and absorbed by the idea itself. I want to scream and cover my eyes with my hands to hide from the shame and explanations that still need to be come up with. The girl said unnecessary things to a small child who should not have heard it. The guy, in turn, asks to continue with explanations so that he better understands what is what. The girl doesn't know if it's normal for children to discuss such things, and even in such a context. It seemed that the book was for all ages, but in reality this is not true. It seems like the perfect idea came to mind, because they are small, just like that, and you can talk about anything. Maybe naivety will help you take everything in the literal sense. Stretching a smile on her face, the little girl says that this is true, because she really wants to eat His Highness like a tasty treat. What was said was good, but Dianelle is not the same as usual, so you will have to try to end the conversation on something else, so as not to leave a bad taste on your soul. The brunette seems more polite and calm than usual. Each time, the friend aggressively refused, and because of each wrong move, he began to turn into a monster. Now, hands are reaching for the book while he asks to read the story just like Daisy, who is much younger than him, did. The publication cannot suit the hero, so the lady is not going to hold back, throwing the book straight into the fire. The young man is silent, but then asks if it's normal for a friend to just throw away a thing that was dear to her, judging by the care she took. The blonde comes out of the situation in almost perfect condition. The girl smiles, saying that Orsinium is much nicer than the hero from the book, so she will no longer be useful, even after she has to return to the witch. Since Daisy herself says so, you have to grind your teeth to believe it. It's better to change the topic quickly so as not to create problems for both of them. Virgo goes over in her head the options for stories that she could tell a man, but as usual, there is not enough time to choose the best one. The young man is standing right next to him, and this makes him a little uncomfortable. His Majesty receives a question about how he previously cut up an antelope, which they both later ate with the Cerberus. It seems that the prince had to cut up carcasses even before, but he simply pretends that he knows nothing, and he inherited the experience from the queen. It happened on its own, without help. Perhaps the hero simply instinctively knew, because he is half-beast. The heroine, of course, did not expect to hear something similar, so now she is trying to understand the logic of what is happening. To not show embarrassment, she nods her head. It seems that the boy is starting to get used to turning into a beast because time passes and nothing changes. He is quite satisfied with the instinctive knowledge of this and is already better able to control the transformations, as the girl saw earlier. This only happens when the witch is not torturing the young man. It turns out that the boy can control when he transforms even in front of the witch, and sometimes it could even help in some way, doing a favor for the owner. If this happens, the hero will no longer be able to turn back into a human, which, on the contrary, is a minus. The brunette had deliberately turned into a panther before and eventually lost his mind. Not everything always goes according to a strict plan that a person builds for himself. I would like to believe in the best, but over time, the young man learned his limits and understood what exactly he should do to win. A strange fire lights up in the interlocutor's eyes when she grabs the palm of the baby sitting next to her, who instantly backs away. She doesn't know why people are only talking about something like this now, but it's wonderful. After all this, a great idea came to mind about what could be done. Also, not understanding what they are talking about, the friend only timidly asks again, hoping that he will receive a normal answer. The next time the old woman comes, you just need to turn back into a panther, which will be fiercer than all the others. This way you will get revenge in a good way. Dionel himself does not yet understand exactly how he needs to behave, so he listens carefully. The blonde believes that she needs to get rid of the woman so that she no longer bothers anyone with her presence in vain. They should succeed if they work as a team. An acquaintance promises that she will steal the remains of the poisonous perfume that the witch usually uses. And it is this that each time has a bad effect on the animal, causing it to be too weak to win. Without it, you can win easily, so there shouldn't be any problems. The plan does not seem so easy, but in any case, they have no other plan, no matter how much they would like to change it. The little girl is sure that the hero will be able to defeat her in an instant, because it's possible. She hopes for the best, even if anything can happen. The brunette is silent for several minutes, but then, instead of asking logical questions, he asks why the woman continues to be called witch. Virgo grimaces because she doesn't understand how else to call her, because her name would sound too strange. His Highness begins to utter curses that make you want to cry, or at least close your ears tighter. It's worth slowing down before things get worse. The ears literally curled into a tube. The girl cannot understand where the boy got such terrible words. The heroine herself thought that her acquaintance lived all the time in an abandoned shack after the abduction, but then it is not clear who taught him such dirty words. Your mouth almost opens to ask or shout, but you have to close and remain silent so as not to blurt out too much by pure accident. Dionel, noticing the expression on his interlocutor's face, begins to laugh, saying that he was just joking. A man is scary when he jokes, although he doesn't notice it himself. He really behaves so strangely that even Daisy, who is usually well-adjusted, has not yet managed to get used to this image. The girl can't believe how much the boy has changed, who just recently seemed downtrodden and always scared. He smiles, and just like that, he's just trying to speak correctly while making fun of him. Despite the strangeness of the situation, my heart feels warm after receiving the energy in response. The conversations are interrupted by the barking of Cerberus, who was outside the door for security and to wait for his mistress, who asked for it. The couple turns. The surprised daughter of the witch does not understand why the dog suddenly began to behave this way, but the brunette's face shows that this is not even a question. A spark lights up in the eyes, which is difficult to hide from others. The man stands up and talks about the perfume he smells. The girl's eyes also display a terrifying fear from which she will not be able to escape even further. This is true, because Kalia arrived at the hut. They should urgently save themselves before things get worse. His Highness instantly puts his hands on the fire, thereby causing it to go out. Daisy doesn't understand what to do next, and simply remains silent while the hero does everything. He grabs the baby's hand and pulls her to the corner of one of the rooms. Noticing the boxes there, the brunette climbs over them to hide and picks up his friend in his arms to throw her behind him. A blonde woman enters the room, putting on an innocent face. Right behind her is a trail of perfume that is impossible to tear yourself away from. She looks around, feigning curiosity about where her dear daughter, whom she loves so much, is. Every word that comes out of your mouth is an obvious lie. Ludkiln does not understand since when she suddenly became so loved, even in words. Attention turns to the friend, who is carefully watching the steps of the sorceress. One can only hope that he does not think wrongly, deciding that this is really her daughter. Saying something out loud will be very dangerous, so you have to remain silent. The figure approaches the stove, and then leans closer to take a closer look at everything. She quickly realizes that the couple was lighting a fire, which of course is not exciting. Instead of a girl, the heroine raised another rat, who, without even a second thought, betrayed the hand that fed her. The lady looks around once again. She knows that the babies are somewhere nearby, so she begins to get angrier than before. She needs them to come out as quickly as possible without annoying her more than before. If they want to live, they must listen. The baby is incredibly scared, but so far, she is the only one who can protect Dianelle. There is still the same mindset in my head that if not her, then no one will help. A minute ago, my lady was telling her friend how he could defeat Kalia, and even looked optimistic. But now this is unlikely to happen. There is only one conclusion. We need a new plan, which they must draw up together. If the witch brought a poisonous perfume, the young man will not be able to defeat her or even get a few meters closer. It is clear that Daisy must step forward as the one who has the right to protect them both. Taking all her courage into her hands, the blonde turns her gaze to His Highness and calls him in a whisper. He must hide while the opportunity presents itself, while the beauty sorts everything out and makes sure everyone is free. The baby bulges his eyes in surprise, not understanding whether this is really happening to him. The girl promises that everything will be fine with her, but you shouldn't worry so much about some little things. The Virgin will leave, but for now it's better not to go anywhere since the scene will not end soon and being beaten and smelling poison will be the worst thing. After speaking, Daisy jumps over one of the boxes and heads forward, straight towards the figure. The young man wants to shout something after him to stop his friend, but he does not dare because of the fear that constrains him. The woman looks at her daughter, and this means the beginning of the end. The heroine tries to reassure herself, assuring that she is not afraid at all. The blonde places her hand on the top of her head, glad that she was able to find the lady. Now the witch is obliged to reward the person for her bravery, but she still does not say in what context this should be used. Miss does not listen to any words of apology and simply snaps her fingers so that a stream of magic falls on her daughter. Half an hour has passed, but the young man is still shaking. He walks out on weak legs into the middle of the hut, which has become completely cold. Falling to the floor, you can only repeat the name of a friend who sacrificed her health. The little girl suffered because of a monster like him, and there is no forgiveness for that. There are clear moments in my head of how, even while under torture, the heroine still assured that everything was fine with her, speaking only with her lips, remaining silent. The tears can no longer be held inside. Getting up, even if there is almost no strength left, the brunette asks himself to be strong. He is obliged to save Daisy and must protect her at all costs. The realization that the mission would be difficult came in advance, but this does not mean that the young man can be stopped. It is clear exactly what should be done in such a situation. The boy runs to the door, which is open but hits the barrier. His body is thrown somewhere far away, and this only makes it more painful. Irritation has already appeared, so ears grow on the head, as well as a tail on the back. There are no intentions to give up so easily, because going to the end is the only way out in this situation. This time, the man gets even angrier and tries to get out in a better way that could work. The barrier is not going to give way, so the only thing left to do is give up after receiving a large number of terrible wounds throughout the body. 2 weeks passed. The girl was placed in an incomprehensible cage, from which she only wanted to quickly escape into the distance. It doesn't work out because the bars ended up being too strong. The man sitting opposite has been poking grass into the cage for an hour now, not understanding why the baby doesn't eat this kind of thing. In front of her stands the heir, who is also the witch's lover. He smiles a strange smile, but seems to be enjoying what is happening, without causing much harm, which could only make everything much worse. Kalia herself gave permission to act. The heroine is once again angry because she does not consider herself to be some kind of rabbit to whom they want to feed the plague, which was recently picked from some unknown place. It may be dirty or with some kind of poison that will worsen the condition significantly. No longer trying to do his job, the young man gets up from his seat and throws the little thing away, noticing that the interlocutor is not at all funny, as he would like. Taking out his staff to do something, the man loses control over it, still trying to do something with the bright streams of energy. One of the rays hit the wall, so heavy footsteps were immediately heard. The witch who came down asks Gelfus what he did. He was asked not to cause unnecessary problems, but disobeying an order was never a huge problem that exists. Sighing, the boy nods, speaks, and asks for forgiveness. He really is guilty, so he pulls the woman closer, blushing a little. Watching this picture, the baby wants to run away and close her eyes, because over time, she even begins to feel a little nauseous. The brunette asks for a kiss so that all the anger will immediately disappear. Obviously, this man has a strong stomach if he manages to hold on. It seems that the boy cannot restrain himself after receiving so much magical energy, which is now rushing from all the cracks. Talking about magic brought up thoughts that I would like to mention out loud. The power of that monster from the hut has increased significantly recently and is only getting darker every day. There could be a logical explanation for this, but the witch doesn't care. Daisy just has to imagine that this amount of energy is enough to fill her body in an instant, allowing her to be omnipotent. Very soon, this person will completely turn into a monster, and then there will be no way back to human life. This news is most frightening. The more the future emperor turns into a monster, the darker the energy he emits becomes, which the villainess herself extracts. Soon the baby will radiate pitch-dark power. This is called the end of the world, at least for him. Instead of a blurry dark red like now, things will get worse. The couple thinks that this is great news, but from the look of the baby, which expresses horror, it becomes clear that she is not at all interested in this because she cannot imagine what will happen next. Surely every reader wondered why Gelfus loves Kalia at least once while reading the novel. Even if the lady saved his life, this does not change the fact that she is a witch who must be hunted by everyone, including her lover. Still, there is a reason why the young man fell in love with this man and made him his partner. This happened because the woman bewitched the prince using her highest methods of magic. His consciousness was shrouded in fog and covered with nets to prevent escape. Every action carried some meaning behind it. This was done so that the guy's love would remain unchanged, even when he learned the whole truth about her. This would, of course, be unpleasant, but obviously not for someone who has no idea what's going on. After the spell was cast, the girl whispered in her ear that a man could become an emperor, and this method was, of course, not the most terrible, since it did not involve murder. They are going to brainwash the empress, who will not be able to resist. Sitting on the guy's lap, the girl asks to convince her friend that she wants to drink honey from a dawn flower that grows in the forbidden forest. Of course, I would like to know what the gratitude would be, but it was already clear what was what. His Majesty will not just stand by and watch his beloved wife, who carries his child, fade away day after day, because the only thing that will be eaten is honey, which was also specially prepared in advance to be included in a perfectly planned plan. As Kalia predicted, the emperor led the soldiers into the forbidden forest to personally find this dawn flower that could help his beloved. He really wanted to do the best only for the beauty, and therefore did not think twice. On the way to that very place, a collapse suddenly occurred, and this is all because the witch managed to curse the place in which they were stuck in advance. It is clear that this was the best option to help his plan become a reality as quickly as possible. The soldiers tried to save themselves and their squad, but the woman specifically cast a curse so that no one could use magic there. In the end, the emperor could do nothing to avoid his needless death, which came too soon and became a blow to the entire kingdom. The empress was so shocked to hear the news that she gave birth to Dionel prematurely. She, like the others, was shocked, because she loved her husband more than anything in this world. When I had to give birth, it seemed as if the man was somewhere nearby and holding the girl's hand. The morning after the birth, a maid came into the room to tell the queen the terrible news. The prince died during the trial, and this could not be avoided. The blonde couldn't believe it, but only one voice sympathized with her, not even suspecting what a storm was ruining her soul at that very moment. The midwife, as it turned out, was bribed by Kalia in advance because the plan should not have failed. She lied that the child died and disappeared with him, but on the same day the baby was kidnapped by someone who would later cause only misfortune and pain. The girl used Dionel to fill Gelfus with magical energy, which he badly needed. Since the Empress had no son, the support of an acquaintance whose power had suddenly increased, rapidly increased, and more people began to love him. Everything was going great until the woman started to get suspicious. Usually, magical energy is determined at birth, but for some reason it began to grow in the air only after the disappearance of the newborn prince. The woman did not understand what was happening, because the energy really grew like mad, and this made her feel uneasy. I had to carefully double-check the entire environment and location of the midwife who delivered the baby several years ago. During her investigation, the lady came across something amazing. That woman passed away, but something more interesting appeared. One of his most devoted servants went on a search, so there was no point in doubting the information. That girl died so suddenly, without changing or explaining anything, exactly when her tracks were discovered. The subject managed to discover a diary, which he in turn brought to his mistress. Haven't gotten around to reading the pages yet. The knight was almost immediately released so that he would not interfere. Leaving the thing on the table, the brunette promises that he will find out as much as possible, if possible. Reading the pages one after another, the lady caught her body trembling, which could not be stopped. As it turned out, the midwife was intimidated by Kalia and Prince Gelfus, and therefore she had to kidnap the child immediately after birth, while lying. I would like to know where the baby was, who was born, but so far there was no opportunity, which made me very sad. The Empress is slowly going crazy. She wants to believe that if she throws her friends behind bars, the child will be home again. Something terrible cannot be allowed to happen to the boy because of reckless actions that were committed in the past. It takes something significant to put a couple behind bars and make sure that they may even be executed. A diary is not enough, and most likely the heroine will simply be threatened under the pretext that the lady is trying to control the rising prince, who should be independent. The best thing the girl can do is prevent Gelfus from becoming emperor. Everyone is not aware, but if this happens, the witch will rule, only with the hands and words of her man. It will be a disaster for the entire kingdom. So far, the chosen option was the only one that remained in the girl's strength. She is exhausted and doesn't know what to do next, but she sincerely hopes for her son's understanding. She promises that she will come for him very soon because she cannot just leave him completely alone. The girl promises her prince that she will make him king no matter what. Many years have passed, but the promise has not changed, so it will be impossible to resist such force. The research will end in success if something like this is done correctly. Gelfus asks again to clarify whether we are talking about a study on recreating a man's heartstone. If everything goes as it should, then becoming a new ruler is a matter of time and will happen in a certain number of months. The beauty bats her eyes, asking if the young man would like to invest more money in the research. The brunette scratches the back of his head and then asks what happened to the funds he gave last time. He always tries to give as much as possible just to please his beloved. The woman begins to get angry because of what was said. It is impossible to believe that someone would remember such a trifle. The blonde definitely said that what she had in mind would be the first of its kind, and she would have to start from the very beginning if something went wrong. Daisy, sitting behind bars, silently watches what is happening and does not understand how she should feel about it. It's like a great way to communicate your failure. Because all the information is already written on the witch's face, you just need to be able to read it. Noticing the dark aura around their bodies, Gelfus almost instantly raises his hands in the air, asking his love not to be angry. Orsinium specifies how much will be needed and is not going to be greedy. I can't believe that the lady is angry because she fears that the boy will spare her the money he has. The inner experiences of the witch's daughter grow before our eyes. It's as if they are mocking when they start talking about the new prospects of becoming an emperor for a person with zero desire, preparation, and magical power from birth. A woman cannot sit and watch an acquaintance become king and allow the collapse of the empire to come. It will be difficult for the queen, but he can protect her, saving her from suffering, of which there was already a lot in life. It's all over. The guy completed the transfer of funds and now turns to the lady again to ask what happened to those who prevented the girl's stay in the capital. She immediately remembers who she is talking about, without any difficulty. Obviously, we are talking about the group that tried to kill the sorceress while she was minding her own business. An evil aura appears around, which brings with it only terrible things. Of course, the lady killed everyone, getting rid of the evidence, because this was the only normal way. Acting like an innocent lamb, the blonde throws her head back on her future husband's chest, asking for forgiveness. She knows that they had a meeting planned in the capital, but nothing worked out. It was impossible to turn a blind eye to how those ignoramuses behaved. As it turned out, all that happened was that people mistakenly crossed the barrier that was placed around the forest, where there was a restricted area. No one is allowed to enter here while Dianelle is in the hut. Even Gelfus himself, who is usually more loyal, understands this. The heroine said that the arrivals even managed to set up a camp, where they settled for a while before continuing on their way. We could only hope that even more people would not come to the fire, which would be more difficult to meet. The witch cast a weathering spell on the camp after the murder, and unfortunately, there was no other choice. Everything looks abandoned now, but the daughter cannot understand how her mother talks so carelessly about deaths. Killing Daisy probably wouldn't cost anything either. Watching a couple chatting about something and watching the man hug the girl from the back, the lady grimaces. She suddenly remembers the camp where she found several things when they were there with the Cerberus. According to the description, the place suits itself quite well. It became clear why that day Kalia returned from the capital so unexpectedly and frightened the little lady. She received handsomely for her antics, but did not even think about what prompted her mother to return back to the tower so early. On the way to the city where the woman was going to meet Gelfus, she most likely sensed the group had crossed the established barrier that kept the others away, and therefore immediately turned straight back, so as not to spoil anything in their plans. No one was supposed to know about the prince and their secret. The girl could not believe at first that someone dared to go deep into the forest. It seemed to her that she was being hunted, or that people were sent by the Empress. Paranoia is something that can't be avoided when you're in the body of a villain, and that's exactly what happened with the beauty's body. What happened was also the reason why the witch found out that the baby had made herself a cloak from her dress. She is simply a genius, and could even become a detective if she had managed to solve the riddle earlier, or if she had thought about the problem of the hike. The boy can't get away from his beloved, but after a minute of silence, he asks about his book, Introduction to Pharmacology. I would like to know where the volume went, because the man hasn't seen it for a long time, but the question worries the girl. Trying to laugh less nervously than it turns out, the brunette says that he just put a card with a great fairy spring there. The girl turns and says that she is in the library on the top floor. The strange thing is that the publication could not be found, even though the cover is inconspicuous. The boy did not have time to extract it. He hasn't even managed to read everything he needs yet, or as he wanted to say, learn the contents. So he's feeling sad. A thought process begins in her head because the heroine suddenly realizes the whole situation. Listening to the conversation, she freezes in shock. We are talking about the same thing that the beauty took from the shelf just a few weeks ago in order to make some medicine for Dianelle. That day, the book flew into the fire, where it burned mercilessly because of the contents in it, which were for adults. The girl does not dare to tell the truth, because she understands perfectly well how this could turn out for her. I don't want it to get worse, so she just remains silent. It's worth sitting quietly in the corner of the cell and watching the scene unfold right in front of your nose. The witch also does not know how to find out the location of the thing, because she only remembers that she left it in one place in the library. Gelfus begins to get angry and worried because he repeats that he hasn't found anything. It is immediately written on the face that something is wrong, but they are simply trying to skillfully hide it. The girl makes a face, asking why her lover is going so crazy over some volume. In any case, you can go to the capital and buy a new edition, but the answer is amazing. The hero assures that this was not an ordinary thing, but almost immediately realizes that he has said too much, so he covers his mouth with his hands. The time has come for the witch herself to be angry. Dark energy gathers around her as she screams at the man, asking if he hid something indecent there again. He shakes his head, trying to defend himself with all his might. It became clear that the novel that was pasted at the end of the book belonged to the future emperor. It was still strange then, because the book was about drugs, but now there is no point in thinking about it. The blonde raises her voice and is now screaming. She has said before that the reason why her husband cannot kiss or fill the stone of his heart is precisely because he sits and reads such stories without any shame. He wants something, but now he has to hide. The young man, blushing, asks why the conversation about kisses came up right now, but the heroine interrupts him. One way or another, nothing matters but the truth. The hair begins to slowly turn red, just like the air around, when the maiden calls to tell what will serve as the answer. Not getting what she needs, the woman almost throws her fists at the young man who is trying to defend himself. As he runs away, he shouts something about how he doesn't know anything and wouldn't have done anything even if he wanted to. Of course, no one believes after the cases that happened before. The brunette smiles, blowing a final kiss. He is going to go see Dionel and says that he loves him and also misses him, while the blonde is still in a wild rage, which only makes her scream more than ever. After the door slammed, the witch's gaze went straight to her daughter. There is fear lurking in the eyes, because the girl instantly began to feel as if they were going to take out all the anger that had accumulated over the last few minutes on her. An ominous smile appears on the face, which they try to disguise. Daisy hasn't been sent on errands for a long time, and it seems like this time they want her to do something. Important work is the most important thing, because you need to remain relevant in order to survive. The blonde, smiling further, says that she has run out of poisonous plants for perfume. She asks to collect a good supply so that already at night she can turn the herbs into a smell that will be heard from all sides for intimidation. It is impossible to believe that the poisonous herbs are really gone, because usually this never happened. The girl lowers her head and asks what she should do with the Cerberus who will not listen. She clarifies whether there is at least something left in stock. There was nothing left, and this should have been understood earlier, because everything was said in advance, and there was no point in denial. The prince took the last one when he left, and it seemed that the girl had none left for the little one, who would not be able to ward off the dogs, which were usually more ferocious than usual. Starting to get irritated, the woman orders him to listen, because it seems that this is not a very developed part of her daughter's brain. She repeats again that all the jars are empty, so there is no point in continuing to beg. In any case, no one will get better, but on the contrary, the situation can somehow be improved. The little girl doesn't understand how she can deal with the Cerberus, who can literally eat her alive. She is scared just by the knowledge of how things could turn out, so she hides from the others. If the daughter is not careful, she will simply be eaten alive without even being spared, but, of course, this does not concern the sorceress. After the scent and the figure evaporated from the chamber, the blonde hung her head, unable to believe why they did this to her. Of course, this was a game for the audience, because in fact, she was given the perfect opportunity to escape and meet with Dionel. The retaliatory strike will be struck very soon. You just need to wait a little, even if it takes a certain amount of time. Daisy is almost on her way, so His Highness won't have to wait very long. A smile of joy appears on your face from realization, which is better to hide as soon as you have to leave. Barrow, like the other dogs as usual, did a good job in delivering the mistress to the hut. Jumping off the body, Ludculm thanks and asks to go hide far away, at least just in case. You need to create at least some illusion that everything is in perfect order. The blonde came to see the prince under the pretext of collecting herbs, which could take hours to find. In addition to all this, the little girl learned that Kalia had no poisonous perfume left at all. Luck is on the heroine's side, so she skips forward, knowing that she can solve this problem when they are together. A familiar voice is heard calling Dionel. He has already turned into a panther and is walking from side to side. Only when she emerges from behind the tree does the little girl realize that Gelfus is standing there, trying to piss off the animal, no matter how terrible it may sound. The prince mocks, saying that the boy will not make a normal emperor because he is just a dirty, disgusting beast whom no one will ever love properly. The panther still doesn't react in any way, but it's clear that it's difficult for him to ignore it. I want to run out and attack the person who is behaving so worthlessly and disgustingly. In fact, the heir without Dianel's power is not capable of anything, and this will almost always be the case. He cannot become the strongest when he was born with very weak potential. The animal rushes forward over and over again while trying with all its might to hit its tormentor, but he is holding a jar of perfume in his hands, which gives him confidence. Each time he sprays a little in the face, causing the young man to writhe in pain. He tries to pull back somewhere to save himself. The man at the moment looks more like a psycho with inclinations that are difficult to distinguish from someone normal. He wants to ask a lot of questions, but his attention almost instantly becomes focused on the jar that he lowers in his hands. The girl notices how the hero is shaking the jar and is annoyed and realizes that there is nothing left there, which of course makes him disappointed. The woman should have given more, but she is a miser. Kalia said that the perfume from poisonous plants that she gave to Gelfus was the last, and this makes the soul rejoice. If the mother told the truth, then this may work to her advantage in the long run. This is just Daisy's imagination, but she wants to hit the tree with joy that flows beyond, no longer having an end or edge. The perfect chance to attack Gelfus has finally arrived, and it's worth taking. If you do this, the witch will immediately come to the rescue, and even without poison, she remains just as powerful, someone who is almost impossible to defeat. The prince arches sharply and grabs his back, screaming about the pain that appeared there. He falls to the ground and looks around randomly. The young man dropped the perfume because someone threw a small stone at him, which already greatly affected his condition. You can't waste time, which is already precious. You need to quickly pick up the bottle and get rid of the prince himself, who can bring problems. Carefully sneaking up from behind, the lady tries to remain as quiet as possible. If you manage to take the little thing, then Dianel will have a chance to attack the enemy, who, without that very poisonous aroma, is nothing of himself. She has almost achieved her goal. While the brunette laments that he embarrassed himself in front of a loser, the girl sees that the young man is turning away and walking away, so she quickly rushes forward, realizing that if she misses, she will immediately die. We can only rely on God and luck, which will most likely dry up very soon. Everything worked out, because now the blonde is holding in her hands the pink bottle that she wanted so badly. She fell to the ground, but exhales with relief. The joy is dispelled by the cold and intimidating voice of a man who appears directly above his head. Gelfus stands like a stone wall that is not even going to move to the side. He completely ignores any signs and only quietly says the name of the girl he knows only as a guinea pig, Kalia. A fire lights up in the eyes, which is incredibly frightening, even more than before. No one should have said that they were not a couple, because when the boy is angry, he looks exactly the same as his beloved, as if her reflection in a male form. The young man rushes forward in a second, ordering him to give the little thing back, but he misses and falls to the floor, because the lady masterfully dodges. She teases the young man, saying that if he were in her place, the old man wouldn't give up such a treasure either. The man cannot believe that he was openly called old like that. He almost screamed, but still lingers because he is waiting for an answer that seems obvious. The blonde is starting to get bored with the boring game they seem to be playing. The baby turns to Dianel and gives him a sign, which means that the real transition will soon begin. A smile spreads across her face, after which the beauty grabs the bottle and throws it to the ground with all her might so that it breaks. The scarlet liquid splashes out, forming a puddle, and fragments fly in different directions. The man asks in a quiet, ominous tone what the girl did. The old man does not yet know that the last broken bottle was the last in his beloved's collection, so perhaps he is not being entirely convincing. If I had known, I would have already run to the capital to hide. It is worth understanding what exactly is happening and how it will all end in the end. Dianel, like the beauty, bypasses the guy who silently looks around, but then bursts into a vile laugh that makes him sick. After he manages to catch his breath, the young man grabs his staff, which was also next to him all this time. Kalia was right, but for now he doesn't intend to say what exactly, so it's for the best. The prince dares to grin at those who support him and is not aware of anything. Throwing the thing forward, the man wanted to make the panther fly to the side, but it seems that the forces began to work a little differently. It seems that the baby has completely forgotten that the person standing in front of him is completely filled with magical energy, which was given to him, presented on a platter. He can handle both of them, no matter what. The man begins to accumulate power, which he seems to be about to direct at an innocent child who has done nothing. He doesn't look like someone who could at least give in this time and let him leave in peace, because their important plan that was drawn up earlier depends on it. The couple had long since realized that the lady had gotten involved with a fool in dark skin. What has been said makes the blood run cold, and one cannot deny the fact that it becomes incredibly scary. I wish what was said was not true, because they were supposed to remain in the dark. By deciding not to think about bad things, the heroine literally protects herself from bad thoughts, which she drives away. She urgently needs to take at least some measures, so she screams that this is not true. If everything had been as said, the witch would not have sent the little girl into the forest to get a plant, knowing that she was on the side of the enemy. It was Gelfus who told the girl to do as he had imagined. He convinced the beauty, saying that they needed strong evidence that the girl had switched to another team. They couldn't find anything, but decided to simplify their task at least several times. It was necessary to know that the heroine communicates with a brat who is not at all aware of his actions. It was not enough to just wait for a moment when it would become easier, so action came in very handy. If an imperial expedition had stumbled upon the couple, the man would not have even hesitated, turning over the hostages as criminals. Only now is it possible to realize how terrible a situation they both found themselves in, and that it will be extremely difficult to find a way out, even with diligence. The brunette turns back to Dionel, who, although a monster, cannot use the power he was given at all. He seems to be waiting for the moment to attack, but it won't happen in order to save his life. Sharply changing tactics, the hero goes back and shoots a stream of fire directly at the girl, who manages to dodge at the last second. He mocks the prince, asking if he really doesn't care about his girlfriend, as he vehemently said from the very beginning. Tears well up in the heroine's eyes, which she tries so hard to hold back. Pulling out his staff, the man orders him to obey and blindly hopes that without the poison, at least something good will come out of what is happening. The monster is not going to make contact, which is basically normal for this species. Perhaps the panther wants to admire her lifeless corpse, which is why he behaves this way. The teeth show even more as the boy lowers his head, not intending to try anything to help himself. The guy is obliged to bow and obey, but it seems that this time everything will go completely wrong. Several Cerberus are rushing from 3 sides, growling angrily. No one understands what's wrong with them these days, although it's nice that the lady tamed them. Seeing the kids, the beauty smiles through her tears and thanks them for showing up on time. All you have to do is be grateful for how things are going and watch your pets in action when they strike. Barrow grabs the boy's leg to prevent him from running away, but instead screams in unbearable pain while another dog burns the scepter donated by the villainess to the ground. There was no more strength left, no matter how hard the young man tried to swear. Gelfus was born without an ounce of the necessary strength that could save the day. Without the item they gave him, he can't use the magic he needs to tame Dionel or feel much more powerful. The only thing that is happening is that the boy is now completely disarmed, and in front of him are 3 angry Cerberus who are ready to kill him on the spot because of the attack on their mistress, whom no one has the right to even touch. The man looks at the girl next to him and suddenly realizes that it was she who tamed the dogs that previously did not obey even Kalia herself. Now it has become clear that everything is falling into place, but the little girl pretends to know nothing about what is happening, simply innocently putting her finger to her mouth. After the old man started throwing insults, it turned out that the Cerberus began to growl more loudly than before. He backs away, begging him not to come any closer, even as the blonde tries to look as innocent as possible despite the deeds she commits. The young emperor should not take the path back, because a surprise awaits him behind him. The guy turns and immediately freezes, because he comes face to face with an angry panther, which has already been tormented and made merciless. Starting to scream, the brunette quickly shuts up, realizing that this will not help the matter. He turns around and falls to his knees, bowing his head. Begging to be spared at least once, The prince also assures that he will never make the same mistake again and will never again behave as cheekily as he should. After all, they are brothers, so asking for forgiveness is normal. They say it's true that you don't understand reality until you're in someone else's shoes, and now Gelfus knows what it's like. The blonde doesn't feel sorry for the scoundrel who miscalculated when he fell for Kalia's love. Barrow leans over the girl, who turns away with an angry expression on her face and grabs her hood, lifting her slightly off the ground where they are. Behind you, you can still hear the groans of a young man who asks his brother, whom he recently remembered, for help that will be useful to him. Watching the panther get closer, the blonde examines His Highness and asks if he is okay. She wants to know if they will recognize her just like that, after several weeks of absence. It is not the fault that the witch placed the body in a prison underground. The boy turns back into human form, in which he watches as the Cerberus rushes forward in order to lick the mistress. She laughs, asking if they need praise, which of course each of them will receive for their bravery and heroism. The prince appears closer and once again moves the heads of the animals with his hands. The young man scolds the pets because they are really big, which means they can easily crush a person out of joy. The baby is loyal to everyone, but that is why she will not say anything as an objection. Finding himself very close, the guy extends his hand, expecting to receive the warm palm of his girlfriend. He helps Daisy get up from the cold ground, and at the same time smiles lightly, as if everything has evaporated and is no longer so important. Now they are the only ones that exist. Something in Dianelle's behavior has definitely changed, but it's still difficult to understand what exactly, because the boy is silent and looks straight into his eyes. The boy seemed to have suddenly become much prettier, and now there was only a soft smile on his face that stretched from ear to ear. Virgo doesn't understand what the joke is, so she asks what the reason is. The answer is obvious, even if not what you would like to hear. The brunette is absolutely sure that the woman is on his side, no matter how hard she tries to deceive him. It seems that the words mean that now the hero will trust and consider his acquaintance not just a friend, but someone who can be trusted with even the most terrible secret. He looks away, so embarrassed, but his hand still remains extended forward, trying to pull the baby towards him. The friend sighs because she continues to smile. No one knows what in her head she thanks for the fact that the formula, "he who feeds you is good," finally worked after so much invested effort, which was not in vain. Once Milady is in an upright position, the young man asks if he can finally let go of his hand. It is clear that in any case, this moment would have come, so nothing can be changed. After a second, the girl gains a new boost of energy, which works best. I just knew him from Gelfusov, but there is not a scratch left on him, which already means a lot. The hands are slightly injured, but it is almost unnoticeable, even under the light. The small propeller makes your head spin, so it's better not to endure it anymore. Straightening his interlocutor's hair, the prince explains that wounds never appear on his body when he manages to change his shape only by his own will. This time it was a means of protection from the arriving tormentor. The fire of curiosity still burns in the eyes. I can't believe that although the young man is cursed, he can change whenever he wants, especially without consequences. This option seems ideal, and many would probably like to get it. What the friend is now telling was not mentioned in the book the reader read. She hasn't missed a single letter, but she can't remember anything like it, so she thinks hard, scratching her chin. The brunette is tired of waiting for his friend to return home from her thoughts, so he asks if she finds any other thing strange. The eyes run from side to side to understand what else could have been missed in a hurry. His Highness walks around, and then it becomes clear that the boy has learned to go beyond the confines of his shack, from which there was no exit before, precisely because of the strange magical barrier. The guy looks more than happy with his end. I can't believe that the curse has been lifted, although most likely halfway, and it's the hardest thing to contain emotions in such a situation. The baby looks around, and then climbs forward to show her smile even wider in all its glory. The blonde went to hug, but after a second she realized that she seemed to have gone a little too far with the dose of her attention. The only thing the main character doesn't understand is whether Dianelle has always been this tall. In a few weeks, a dozen new centimeters were added to the growth. The boy has become too old, so the best solution is to try to change his mind and speak in a new way. Barrow distracts the beauty by literally licking her hair, as if pointing to something. A memory of a witch comes to mind, still as terrible as before. The baby desperately grabs His Highness's shoulders, saying that they should hurry. At first, it's not clear what all the fuss is about, but the fun is just beginning. As it turned out, the sorceress had just run out of the perfume she usually uses, so she could attack completely unexpectedly. The opportunity presents itself, because now the prince can also independently go wherever he wants, including to the tower. Unquenchable hope still sparkles in his eyes. The girl hopes that she can go to the forest to meet the main character after defeating the witch. The plot shouldn't have changed too much, so all that remains is to behave calmly and observe the situation. Grabbing the prince's hand, the blonde pulls him forward, just like her pets. The daughter of a witch and the main character is on the way to earn a quiet life for herself without any bullying and other horror. In the distance, right next to the entrance, there is a blonde who looks furiously at those who have come. She considers them both to be nothing more than vile rats, and one of them has indeed become a traitor. The ends of the hair glow scarlet, just like the waves of power around. The girl freezes first, looking back at her mother. While there is opportunity and time, you can try to somehow consider the figure of the villain. It seems that the woman had already had time to cry, but she did not wipe away the traces of the trails of tears, although she should have in order to seem truly evil. The woman realizes that she should not have brought someone like a degenerate from the Ludkeln family into her tower, but she realized this too late. There was no point in making a stupid plan that would now have to be cleaned up. The lady accumulated strength in her hand, only to be ready to fight immediately. It seems that the whole problem is that the witch found out what Dionel did to her good party for the good emperor, and now she takes out her insult in all known ways that can be chosen, launching fires in different directions. The child forgot that her mother was a real witch. From the very beginning, it was clear that Gelfus was under a curse, but it was not clear what kind. This was done with the pure purpose of understanding that she would never be betrayed, although in the end, even this did not help. With the help of the lady's power, she managed to follow every step of her future husband, and that's how she found out everything that this couple had done. They had absolutely no intention of getting caught, even though they were heading for a direct battle with the girl. The woman does not believe that anyone around her will ever be able to understand her pain. The perfect plan, ready to use, collapses literally the day before it becomes successful. It is powerless to stand and look at what is happening when you want to scream from the hopelessness that is overtaking you. Virgo experienced the same disappointment, which made her become very embarrassed and even angry to such an extent that she now hurt other people. The grass in your hands is not ordinary, but poisonous. The baby falls to her knees, still not understanding where the plant came from, when her mother clearly said as if they had ended a long time ago. Apparently lying wasn't a big deal. His Highness rushes forward in order to protect his girlfriend and himself, already in the form of a monster, but a stream flies at him, which throws his body several meters away. I can't believe I had to fail and the pain that won't go away. Daisy has no idea what was going through the woman's head when she rushed out to gather some weapon herbs immediately after losing Prince Gelfus. The blonde was only thinking about how to kill her daughter as slowly as possible, and also painfully to such an extent that she would want to leave. I also want to avenge the future emperor most of all. It is necessary to get even for the ruined plan, which did not work only because of the little one. Snuggling up to her friend, the lady tries to figure out what they should do next. She thought that she would be able to defeat Kalia, but she was very mistaken. You won't be able to do anything, so all you can do is run away. The lady herself does not notice how the guy becomes human again, and now they are running away in the rain, while behind them the roar of the witch is heard, who vehemently believes that such rats have no right to escape after what they have done. Cero and Russ appear directly in front of them, blocking the witch's passage. She is unable to cope with the Cerberus, no matter how hard she tries to pacify them, and all because of her terrible nature and character, which is saturated with anger. The couple runs to Biro, who is already lying on his side so that they can climb onto his back. They are about to leave, but they hear another cry of mockery. No one can resist such a powerful dark magician, so there is no point in running away. The blonde appears closer. Her eyes became even crazier, and her tears still hadn't dried, even after an hour had passed. The voice breaks as the beauty asks her daughter to come closer and not provoke, as long as she has the strength to restrain herself. Cerberus escapes, but of course everything will not end as simply as everyone present would like. Virgo flies into the air and then arches back. Something begins to erupt from the back, and then beautiful scarlet wings, larger than a person, open up. Daisy, no matter how hard she tries to escape from reality, will forever remain the daughter of a sorceress, who will be remembered as the one who stole the real prince and killed the heir of Gelfus. Trying to ignore, the little girl is worriedly interested in where they are going. It seems like there will be a safe place very soon. It seems that everything around is only getting darker, but it's better to try to think only about the good. Behind you, you can still hear a voice that has become hateful, reminding you that your daughter is too slow. Barrow finally stopped, but the place doesn't look good because of the million white cracks in the soil. The baby begins to cry uncontrollably, believing that she has ruined their lives. The boy is trying with all his might to entertain the lady, asking her to look at him quickly. He makes a promise that he will protect at all costs. I can't believe what was said is true. The hero is not going to send his girlfriend somewhere all alone, because he knows very well that this is not the best option. You shouldn't cry over trifles when there are loved ones nearby who are ready for absolutely anything. The blonde sighs and calms down a little, making exactly the same promise, which this time both will have to keep. She will also protect them to help His Highness, who does not quite understand what's what, although this is temporary. The wonderful moment is already ready to be interrupted by the witch, who is approaching and smiling with the same crazy smile. The heroine understands that she is the only one who can now protect Dianelle. Therefore, no matter how afraid she is, she must do everything possible to win. As soon as everything is over, you can find a place and wait for the main character, who will lift the curse completely. They will not allow the witch to do whatever she wants. Of course, they are not completely wrong, but this is not the end. The eyes light up even more red. The woman is going to kill them both right here and now, and then deal with the Cerberus, even if they continue to try to get lost in the trees. Kalia has no idea how the boy lifted the curse from the hut and managed to escape, but this time the end has come that will end an era. Hearing this makes the blood freeze in your veins almost instantly. Barrow, it's time to run away to take his companions with him, but it seems that he is looking sweetly in the direction of the sorceress. It's immediately clear that she did something using force, but there was no time left to think. The hero behind asks his friend to get ready and throw unnecessary thoughts out of her head. Getting out of here is the main task that now faces them, so there is no need to dwell on the strange sensations inside. The guy tries to prepare himself for the long journey, but he hears another cry asking where they are going, when right in front of them stands a real person who remains important in the same way. The lady triggers one of the poisoned chains. The children are already ready to take the blow, and realizing that Cerberus will not go anywhere, they simply close their eyes, but the chain hits some kind of translucent barrier that appears as if out of nowhere. It seems that His Highness did it, and that is exactly what Daisy herself thinks. The villainess is no less surprised, almost speechless, because she could not overcome the very barrier that was put in front of her earlier. A huge girl with shiny blonde hair crawls out from under the silence of the lake. She greets the new arrivals and talks about what a wonderful afternoon they all met together in her place. It seemed to the beauty that she felt her dogs nearby, but, as it turned out, there were also charming angels in the form of children who were brought at the same time. An innocent smile blooms on your face, which makes you feel good. Looking around, the woman asks why the kids are so scared. Her voice is so pleasant that you want to immediately fall asleep and lie down on the soft pillows to get a well-deserved rest while she continues to talk. Most likely what happened because of the very witch who stands on the other side. The blonde gives off the same aura of evil, but becomes even more evil. She doesn't understand what's wrong and where the huge figure came from under the water, which was quiet and covered with cracks. The stepmother orders them to go straight to her, blindly hoping that someone will go to certain death. The blonde smiles, saying that she is a great fairy, and her source is a safe place that only bad people who have behaved differently than normal people cannot go to. The baby asks the name again in disbelief, but then it dawns on her. She read something similar in a book a little earlier, so she cannot confuse such a character with the one she loved so much from the very beginning. Stretching out her thumbs, the girl scratches the dog's chins, asking how they did. Not fully assessing the situation, one of the companions asks how she knows the Cerberus, who in an instant seem to have become tame kittens with a kind look. Of course, the kids were famous, because the Great Fairy periodically takes care of them like no one else, and knows that this is really important. That is why the dogs knew where to go and where exactly the safe place was, which they needed to get to as quickly as possible in case of danger. The blonde still doesn't understand what's wrong, because the place looked very dangerous when they arrived just 10 minutes ago. The cracks that stretched forward along the ground did not allow passage, because it seemed as if very soon they would fall down. Smiling, the beauty smiles as if nothing had happened. This was all because the fairy at that time did not really trust the newcomers, even if everything changed over time. The heroine notices that the person standing right in front of her is the same girl adopted by the witch. Now the woman trusts the most. Barrow came to the place almost every day and talked about how wonderful his new girlfriend was, while completely forgetting about who he was talking to. He said that he had found a sweet little housewife who now shows care even when there is no time to take care of herself. Daisy turned out to be the same person from the story. A finger touches her cheek, poking her as if it were a soft toy. Trying not to react in any way, the beauty only says that she is pleased to meet you. This is the best option for what can be said in response. Attention turns to the prince, who is trying with all his might to blend into the crowd. He is the same damned Dionel, about whom there were also a lot of strange legends. He greets his new acquaintance, remaining as reserved as usual before. The fairy lowers her head in frustration, because the young man's curse is so complex that even she will find it difficult to try to remove it from a person. There is nothing to be done, although this fact is sad, and all that remains is to try to find some other option for what can be done. There is not much hope, but as they say, he who does not try does not drink. The kid turns back to his friend and tries to assure her that everything will be fine with him. He tries not to pay attention to his own feelings, and although he is very worried, he carries on well. Don't be discouraged until the final verdict is given. The glass of the barrier is hit over and over again, and of course it is Kalia who is in no way able to stop and calm down. She is a great sorceress that people dare not look down on, otherwise there will only be trouble. The woman orders them to come to her, but the guys are covered by a huge palm, again the voice that reassures and assures them that they are safe. The blonde cannot leave the children alone or give them into the hands of someone who will not take care of them, and who, after everything that has happened, will simply kill them. For good children like them, this place will always be a safe haven in which to relax, and also live if necessary. Unfortunately, the woman cannot get rid of the witch. No one had seen her before, so it was time to leave everything as it is and try if possible. In any case, the fairy can provide protection for as long as those who arrive in desperation need it. All you need to do is just not go beyond the barrier, which allows you to turn around for games and the rest. Cerberus moves away so that the guys can look around and understand whether they like being in this place. There is no choice, so you have to agree. The area is simply a paradise for children. Honey and milk are known to never run out, and besides, there is a lot of food here. Warm, rather more favorable weather makes you relax, even if just recently your heart was pounding in your chest and beating at breakneck speed out of fear of dying and letting your friend down. Daisy listens to sweet stories, but has no idea what exactly to say. Reciprocating kindness is of course important, but that doesn't mean they have to stay in one place. The fairy does not immediately understand what the problem is, because she believes that the kids will be quite comfortable. The blonde knows what words to choose so that people agree with her. As great as this place is, it doesn't mean there's any desire to be locked up again. the whole story could easily repeat itself. In order to meet the main character and know happiness, you should be in the forest before she arrives. The boy watches with eyes of complete understanding, so as soon as she falls silent, he decides to take matters into his own hands. She's right, so they have to find a way to get out as quickly as possible. The beauty sighs heavily, but does not turn away. It's amazing how she remains calm even in such a situation, but from the very beginning, she did not want to imprison anyone near her. In this case, there is simply no good choice left, and you need to agree with this. People are strange creatures who are sometimes very difficult to understand correctly. They reject comfort and rush into adventure again, instead of stopping at least for a while. These children turned out to be even more militant than all the others whom the beauty had met before. Don't worry too much. No matter how hard it is to go through all the difficulties, the blonde promises that she will help along the way until they decide to stop, or until they reach their goal. There are very few such people, and she is ready for anything. The woman holds out some strange bag, which at first seems small, but only in her hands. In fact, the thing is the size of the heroine. She asks why her friend should help, but she just smiles. They played with her dogs, and not only because the beauty was touched by how friends tried to protect each other. Killing a witch to protect new acquaintances will not work, because she is still a great fairy who must remain out of conflict, so it remains to come up with some other good option that will work. The boy wonders what they can do. Everything will be fine if they win with the girl's help. She is strong, so even if she doesn't kill, she can help a lot. The couple looks at each other because they understand that perhaps everything will work out as best as possible. With one voice, the children ask to be helped to use magic that was previously inaccessible. Kalia is a magician who turned to the side of evil. It would be logical to use the same against her. The blonde freezes and thinks for a few minutes about what she might say. They already have magical energy, because it can be seen from several kilometers away by people like the Great Fairy. Children should try their hand before giving up and running to others. Unfortunately, Daisy is from the Ludkeln clan, which is already closing the road to spells. It is precisely because of her origin that the baby cannot use magic, even with energy. The friend understands perfectly and nods her head. His Highness is not from the same family, so it will be much easier for him than for others. The hero seems to use up a bit of energy when he turns into a monster, which happens quite often. He would like to try to do something to win with what he already has. The fairy shakes her head. The two of them already have something to start with, but the lady cannot help so simply using magical power. They ask, but this is not a good enough reason for them to immediately rush forward, risking their reputation. The prince lowers his head and grunts in agreement. Both of them fell down almost immediately, because there were no other options, but they were quickly cheered up. An acquaintance can lend her strength at least for a short time, and thus it will be possible to begin the battle with Kalia. The guys don't believe what they heard because it seems absurd. A scream breaks out, which you have to immediately restrain. The blonde says that this is possible. She will place her magic into an item that can be used by those who receive the item. What will be transferred can only be used for 10 minutes, but this will be more than enough. A smile appears on your face, and a fire lights up in your eyes, which says everything. If they have the strength to oppose Kalia even for a moment, then there is still hope. Before starting to do anything, the woman points her finger to the side and asks her to turn there. The guys don't quite understand what the idea is, but they still follow what they are told in order to quickly start the battle. The witch still stands on the other side of the barrier, but now much more evil than she was before. She hits the glass with her hands as hard as she can, screaming that they should get out quickly. The beauty notices that the stepmother is evil, but then they see a reflection of each other who have become more mature. The girl tries to express her surprise to His Highness at what is happening, but they are interrupted by the fairy herself, who explains what exactly she did. They became larger for a short time, because in a child's body it will not be possible to use magical objects properly. Nothing will last longer than a few hours, and immediately after the battle, the bodies will return to their normal sizes, as expected. The magic will also end just in time, and in this case, it will be clear what to do next. The woman is really trying with all her might to do everything as best as possible. These two will become wonderful young men. We need to wait until they grow up, and one day everyone will look exactly like they do now after the spell has been cast. A couple with surprised faces listens and takes in every word. The girl had already seen the prince so grown up in the illustrations of the novel she was reading, but she was interested in how Daisy would change after she grew up. To understand better, Ludkeln gets off Barrow and walks closer to the lake. Bending over the transparent surface, the blonde jumps back in surprise. The witch's daughter was described as skinny and ugly in the publication, but then it is not clear what kind of bunny is visible in the reflection. She looks completely healthy and so wonderful that you want to smile. The future king appears behind her and touches her friend on the shoulder, reminding her that it's time for them to move forward. The main character is immediately distracted from her appearance and asks the question of how exactly to use the magical items that they will receive soon. A stream of scarlet energy rises sharply through the hands. The vortex grabs bodies and wraps them in itself. Magic circles appear on the wrists. They will allow you to track how long you can still use magic, and more. After this, the fairy snaps her fingers so that a strange object appears in her hand. The man turns out to have a sword, while his partner has a hook. Both should be effective enough to defeat the sorceress. The magic circle will disappear every 2 minutes. There will be 5 laps in total, so you can understand that it will only be 10 minutes in total. Unfortunately, this is all the beauty can do to help, but she asks you to be as careful as possible and come back. She will be waiting behind the glass. The couple promises that they will return very soon and silently hopes that they will be lucky. Going beyond the barrier, both feel how the atmosphere is shifting, because everything around is dark, cold, and there is an excess of energy. The witch stands nearby, looking down at the arrivals. The voice breaks when the woman calls her daughter a brat who abandoned her. She doesn't know what trick they pulled to change their appearance, but that doesn't change the fact that each of them is just useless trash who doesn't deserve anything. After expressing her dissatisfaction, the blonde rushes into battle, taking out her chain, but it almost immediately hits the sword, which the future emperor puts forward. Horror is shown on her face while she realizes only one thing: the attack was blocked, and everything will not be so simple. The girl applied poison to the chains, and therefore it is impossible for someone who is an animal not to be afraid of the blows inflicted. It seems the witch still hasn't understood anything. The curse has long been lifted, so defeating Orsinium will be almost impossible. Starting to laugh like a fit, the sorceress says that nothing has changed. A man is mistaken if he thinks that since his body has become larger, nothing else will happen. He should have been better prepared for the fact that his life was about to be taken. The brunette says that not only his appearance has changed, but also something else, and steps back a little. The daughter appears behind her and shows her hook. They have many more weapons than are visible, so there is no point in being afraid. Daisy is only Ludkeln, who will remain forever, but she already dares to come forward against a much stronger person. The witch evaporates, but there is still an ominous atmosphere around and laughter that echoes in the ears. This cannot be avoided even if you cover your face with your hands. The couple is left alone, vaguely looking around in the hope that they will eventually be able to get the woman. It seems they underestimated their opponent, because now it didn't turn out quite as planned. Weapons and magic circles that are running out of time will not wait. The beauty turns to His Highness, already ready to cry, and asks what they should do next. The brunette had no idea that Kalia could erase signs of her presence in such a short time. She urgently needs to be found to complete the battle. The guys decide that it is better to go a little deeper into the forest and then head back to the waterfall. Cerberus appears from afar, shouting about what the great fairy conveyed. She said the best thing to do would be to head back to her place to recharge. Barrow stops nearby, and the owner gently extends her hand towards the muzzle. I can't believe the dog has gained the gift of speech. When asking how this happened, the lady does not receive an answer because it is not so important. They should quickly follow the trail to make it in time. 2 minutes have passed, and you can see how the circle of magic around the hand begins to renew. The maiden desperately grabs onto His Highness and says that they quickly need to go back, otherwise time will run out. We can't let the witch win. The man does not understand what they are talking about, but the instructions of their savior are repeated to him again. The patient girl understands what her friend is saying, so she climbs onto the dog in the same way as the prince. What is happening must be connected with the magic that was presented in the form of circles. There is an explosion behind them that makes the ground shake. The beauty does not know what to do next because she feels extremely helpless. She stretches her hand forward, but does not have time to grab anything and immediately flies down. Daisy should pull herself together and try to be as careful as possible. This time, the future king managed to grab her, but next time the mistake could end her life just like that. Trying to calm down, the woman climbs onto the back of Barrow, who immediately sets off. Fires fly around, almost setting all three on fire, but Cerberus skillfully dodges from time to time. He is trained, but even such a smart animal cannot forever try to prevent the impossible. They are both scared beyond belief. Kalia hides, but continues to hunt her opponents. This strategy is good, but definitely not for guys. The girl's eyes show a lack of understanding of the situation and what she should do next. A dialogue pops up in my head with a fairy who said that she would put her magic into an object that could be used. She said that you can try your luck, even if you don't succeed on the first try. Nobody forbids you to try. In this case, the beauty in her head begs the staff to do at least something as she turns and launches a stream of magic at what is rushing towards them. This shouldn't be the end, and they will fight until the last 10 minutes are up. The energy crashes into the witch, who was standing next to one of the trees, hovering above the ground under a transparent spell. The blow actually hit him right in the stomach, causing him to cower. It seems that Daisy forgot her place while she was in the company of the prince. A new stream of power gathers in his hands, which darkens with every second, becoming more and more scarlet shades. The woman launches that same weapon forward, shouting something about how she will never forgive the one who did this to her, so the baby may not even count on it. The blonde ducked down because the prince warned her. Her thoughts are in a completely different place because the beauty constantly continues to check the time. The third round has begun, which means that they have 6 minutes left, during which they have to defeat the sorceress or die. Barrow runs further without stopping. They are at a waterfall where the great fairy told them to come, but no one has any idea what to do next in order to get the result. The beautiful sky welcomes travelers. The blonde appears behind her once again, even more ferocious than before. She doesn't hold back when she screams that all her dreams have come to an end. You will never again be able to become a princess and be with the prince at the throne. Tears roll down your cheeks. The children destroyed everything without realizing it. Of course, they needed the witch to understand what it was like to feel disappointment, but she didn't expect years of work to go down the drain. This doesn't make any sense. No one knows how desperately the beauty wanted to become a princess and then an empress. She thought about this every day, and when she wanted to give up or was tired, she remembered what reward awaited her in the end. The woman endured much torment while she calmly played at love. Gelfus was actually very annoying and did not behave at all as a person should next to a sorceress. Nobody knew that everything would end like this. Such a vile person as the former prince should have known not love, but only the worst, even if in the end this did not happen. Realizing that another attack is about to follow, the woman swings her arms to repel it. Daisy asks you to help her create at least something so that they can finally defend themselves. The brunette promises that he will always be there and will not leave, so he stretches out his hand with force and puts it on the sword. Blue light envelops the weapon, which is ready to strike. Finally, the pair were able to create a shield. Beauty can't believe that they managed to unite and escape. This is not a joy forever, because Kalia will destroy both of them if you simply block her attacks without attacking in return. You need to gather yourself and attack quickly to jump over. The girl turns to His Highness. She knows exactly how they will win. You can set up Ludkuln as bait that will lure the villain to the waterfall, where you can try to deal with her once and for all. Ultimately, there is no other choice. While the girl will distract the woman from the hostage, he is obliged to use this opportunity to escape. In the end, there are no other options. The man freezes in surprise because he cannot allow what just appeared in his head to happen. A friend must live no matter what, and the fact that she wants to sacrifice herself is not at all what you want to hear. Not paying attention to what the guy says, the blonde thinks about what she can do next. They have very little time left, so there is no need to show off. It will be better if the attack is from a person who is used to using magic. The girl is just from a family that has never dealt with anything like this, so she cannot even use a magic item normally. Accordingly, the choice falls on Dionel himself. If they separate, Kalia will decide that her daughter is only sacrificing herself to protect her friend and will weaken her spells. When this happens, the man is obliged to attack as quickly as possible without wasting a second of extra time. The guy thinks for a while longer and then nods decisively. For that matter, he agrees, even if it's a little difficult. The girl must distract the enemy a little more while quick preparation takes place in the new place. Placing her hand on His Highness's palm, the girl asks not to worry about her so much, because she is more than sure that everything will go fine. After this, the lady gets off the dog, looking at the witch, who is also burning with energy. Running forward, the maiden dodges. She must get her mother's attention as much as possible before she realizes that Dionel is trying to attack her, instead of running away back to the Great Fairy with Barrow. The witch frowns. Apparently, the brat hasn't changed a bit, since she's trying to run away just to save her friend. She always behaved approximately the same, so there is no surprise in this. There is even less time left, so the girl hurries with all her might. She stops to catch the breath she's lost. An ominous voice is heard from behind. In the end, the beauty decided to run away, so you can decide as if all she knows is how to run away. The future emperor will soon be around if Ludkuln holds out a little longer. You just need to try to generate some idea and gather as much power as possible. Daisy is afraid, but knows that she has no other choice. The witch is very close. She asks her daughter not to try to deceive her, because the stupid plan was already figured out long ago, even before it was invented. Obviously, the beauty sacrifices herself to protect the prince, which in itself is quite stupid. The prince, whom the heroine so badly wanted to protect, is still standing in one place, which means one thing. The plans failed, no matter how hard the girl tried to do everything in the best possible way. The blonde laughs, realizing that now she has to make fun of her. The girl goes out of her way to sacrifice herself, but he is so pathetic that he did not move an inch due to his strength being gone. Nothing will help either of them because they don't work as a team. Wherever the girl goes, she will remain a lab rat who will not be respected anywhere she goes. This makes some sense, but the blonde is not going to listen to this, taking it straight to her face. The baby should know perfectly well what happens to a rat that has bitten its owner. Usually, animals are not left alive because they are too stupid. With these words, the witch collects another stream of energy in her hands, which she prepares for an attack. A second later, a blade is pierced into the stomach from the back, which forces the woman to choke on scarlet liquid. With a dark expression, the brunette says that the only one who will know death will be Kalia. She tried to avoid it, but nothing lasts forever. The body slowly lowers to the ground, first bending double. The hands fall to the ground, and several bunches of poisonous grass fall out of the sleeves, which had previously been used to launch at the opponents with whom the sorceress fought. The body becomes small, just like the weapon, and it is Daisy who is the first to become herself again. She notices how her friend begins to squint and realizes that the whole problem is the herbs, which will again interfere with him. Standing next to her, the baby pushes the bun to the side. Kalia didn't even hear the prince approach, so now she's whispering something about exactly this. The woman falls to the ground completely, no longer moving. The boy is much smarter than the villainess thinks, and this cannot be taken away from him. The face wrinkled like dried fruit. Daisy recoils in fear, not understanding what is happening. Most likely she returns to her real age because she used magic to look young. In fact, it didn't make any sense. The girl suddenly starts laughing. This makes you want to hide, because a flock of unpleasant goosebumps runs through your body. Her hands stop on the ground at her sides as the maiden lifts her body with great difficulty. She won't die so easily. The blonde is about to rush into battle again, but she is stopped by Barrow, who rushes at her from above, opening his mouth. A wild scream is heard that fills the entire forest, while the children stand and watch what is happening. Trying to fight off the dog, the woman frantically shouts something about how they should not have been created in the first place, because even these degenerates betrayed their owner. Now it's definitely the end, although she is trying with all her might to fight back with strong streams of energy. The heroine promises that she will help the animals find out what their real owner is. Daisy understands that now it will be even worse than before, so she wants to rush to help. But the prince stops her. It's too dangerous there now, and getting hurt wouldn't be the best option. At that very moment, the girl understood exactly what her friend was saying. He always just smiled to assure that everything was fine with him, and there was no point in worrying. All that remains is to cry, even if there is no more strength left. Barrow rushes at Kalia and, grabbing her by the throat, carries her straight to the cliff, and even after she begins to resist, he jumps straight down. The heroine rushes forward, but it seems too late to do anything. The girl watched how everything happened, and now she can't believe that someone could do something like that. I can't believe that the dog died so heroically to save its owner. Chero jumped off the cliff, dragging Kalia with him. Now the heroine believes that everything that happened was only her fault, and believes that he did not deserve such a sad end. She is scared to think what life will be like next without someone to whom she has become so attached. Cerberus would not have died if the lady had been strong enough to get rid of Kalia on her own. The girl blames herself for not being able to help when her friend needed it so much. Tsero chose to save his mistress, so the boy tries to console her. We should be glad that the animal chose the beauty instead of its creator and mistress Kalia. He truly considered the girl his friend, so he wanted to help, even though he lost his life. In his eyes, this was not the worst option. The heroine is not even capable of taking revenge on someone, only to be the one who does it. This was the first time this had happened for the sake of the prince, and trying to take revenge on someone and fighting Kalia was something new. Daisy has never experienced this before, so it's normal to not know how to do something new. It's impossible to be good at something you've never done before. The girl tries to listen and understand what she is told, but this is too difficult for such a young organism as she is. The tears never stopped, but only intensified. Barrow, who was taking the couple to the place where the great fairy lives, stopped and then began to bark furiously. The brunette distracts himself from calming the woman and looks into the distance, not quite understanding what is wrong. It seems like there is something there, but what exactly remains to be seen. A smile appears on his face, and then the boy began to shake the girl by the shoulders so that she looked forward. There is a dog standing in a collar of tree foliage, looking straight at the couple. This is Tsero, who was just tearfully mourned a few minutes ago on the road to the lake. The girl instantly jumps down to the ground and rushes forward. The fairy crawls out from under the surface of the water and smiles when she sees such a sweet meeting of these two. There are still tears in my eyes, but this time they are from happiness. It seemed that we would never be able to see our pet again. The dog runs forward to attack its owner, but their joyful meeting is stopped by the prince. He picks up the baby in his arms, saying that this will be dangerous for Daisy herself. An animal, out of joy, can overdo it, and then nothing will help. After things became a little calmer, the young man lowers the beauty to the ground, saying that we can go hug each other. Turning around, the blonde asks with her eyes what that was all about. The brunette tried to protect his friend, but it seems he went a little too far. Chero licks his owner's cheek to show her how much he missed her all these hours. Barely holding back, the little girl asks what exactly happened. It seemed to her that he died because he jumped off the cliff so bravely. Too many questions remain. A man's voice assures that everything is fine. In surprise, the beauty jumps back sharply, because she never expected that they would answer her in a human voice. There are sparkles in the eyes that resemble a slight smile. The fairy who is leaning on the shore smiles, saying that the connection is indeed very touching. The girl doesn't understand what exactly we're talking about, so she asks again. I want to understand as much as possible before something happens. The blonde sometimes acts too mysterious. In fact, the woman foresaw the future when they left to fight Kalia. She clearly saw that Cerberus was going to sacrifice himself for Daisy in order to kill the witch completely. At first, it was clear that the couple would not be able to complete the matter, so he did it. In order to help Tsero, the fairy pulled out her hair and put it in the animal's fur. This is how I managed to contact him immediately after it was all over. So he was found and brought back. The rescue happened just in time. The girl hopefully asks if the pet is alive, but from the sad look of the interlocutor, it is already clear what the answer will be. Unfortunately, Sero died, and he was near the lake only because special energy was shared with him. Nothing can change, and you need to be grateful for what you have. Dionel immediately understands where the conversation is heading. If the pet leaves the place, it will die. Now the pet has the right only to stay close to its creator, otherwise it's worth saying goodbye in advance. This news is, of course, heartbreaking. The baby will not be able to move beyond the barrier, but will live as long as it remains in this area. The woman could have told in advance, but did not. If she had, Daisy would not have been able to go to defeat the witch, knowing the price of victory. She believes that she could have prevented Sero's death. The blonde does not deny that it is difficult with her, and the great fairy did the right thing, but this does not mean that she is sad in her soul. The pet lowers its head to rub against its owner's hands. The voice is quiet, but even when he says that he is alive, which means there is no point in crying, they will be able to see each other when necessary. Cerberus said that he loves his owner very much, no matter what. It's the only thing he can say, but he continues to try to hug anyway. The girl says the same thing in response, no longer holding back the tears that flow on their own from strange feelings of affection. Several hours had passed since they arrived back at the lake. The girl sits on the shore and cries about how useless she is. She's Lodkon, so she gets hurt a lot even when using magic items. If only the descendants were different, life would be better, the fairy reassures, knowing that support is really important now. Although the heroine cannot use magical energy, she can also use her knowledge, which will always be in her head. If you believe in yourself, things will always be completed. The next morning came. The blonde emerges from under the water, stretching and wishing good morning to her guests. She is surprised that the little girl started studying early in the morning. As it turned out, she brought a bunch of books from Kalia's library in order to have time to learn as much information as possible. Dionel does not understand what her friend is going to do with all the knowledge from pharmacology that she will extract from the volumes. The prince does not understand that she needs to live on something once the time comes to leave. Now you need to find a profitable job that you can start when you are older. The prince is the main character of the novel, which is famous, and after meeting the heroine, he will receive his happily ever after, although he does not know about it yet. He doesn't care what happens next, but the villain's daughter has a completely different future. She needs to somehow provide for her own accommodation. Besides all the things that get in the way, the lady should also have died a long time ago according to the plot. This did not happen, but it does not mean that life will become easier. In addition to all this, the girl, of all people, ended up in the body of Kalia's daughter. There is no choice, so you need to study. The prince is distracted from his thoughts by once again asking the same question, since he still wants to know the purpose of using the things he sees. Virgo simply feels that one day knowledge will be useful to her. Medicines prepared by witches are highly prized. I would like to believe that you can make a fortune just by selling these things that will be made. The fairy can't believe that the villain's daughter is thinking about something like this in order to ensure her life in advance. It's like a person who is completely different from ordinary people. The girl offered her blood as an offering to the fallen god, who could have accepted it anyway. Kalia was a specific person, so it's better not to remember her. The brunette gets up, saying that he will go hunting, since he does not want to listen to the stories around him. Waving her hand one last time, the friend hopes that they will see each other again very soon. He took a sword with him when he went to pick up books, and it seems that the hunt will also be done with the help of a weapon. The man no longer intends to let go of the little thing, hoping that it will help him. While seeing the boy off, the lady is still thinking about why her friend uses a sword instead of magic. As mentioned earlier, even from a sorceress, he has a large amount of energy that he can use after the curse is lifted. The blonde standing behind suggests that Dionel is simply afraid of magic. So far, this is the most logical answer you can get. The lady is not exactly sure what the reason is, but one thing is certain. Perhaps the boy's body rejects the force because of the curse that left its traces in the blood. The magical energy of the guy and the beast he turned into was mixed for a long time. It's sad to see this considering the boy has a lot to go through. He would be invulnerable if he learned to use his abilities properly. It would be nice to take away all the fears. The fairy addresses the girl as a traveler from another world. Fear is clearly visible in the eyes when the girl carefully asks how something like this became known so easily. She can't believe it. The woman knew about the difference in reality from the first moment. As soon as the blonde arrived at the lake, the baby did not come into this world by choice, and this was also noticeable. As a benefactor, she feels very sorry for people who have to go through something they don't like. Since everything is mixed up, I would like to know why exactly the lady found herself in a new reality then. The only explanation is to get rid of your past mistakes that were once a problem. The beauty doesn't understand what we're talking about, so she quietly asks again. The friend herself doesn't know what to say here, so she asks if there are any ideas about this. She knows that a formed answer has been in her head for a long time. Horror is shown on her face, but so far the girl cannot give the answer that is expected of her. There is a thought process going on in my head, which also takes time. In a second, the problem becomes apparent. It seems that what happened had something to do with the fact that the heroine wrote negative comments about the monster prince, while simultaneously accusing the author of an overabundance of clichés. She's done this many times. The friend, as if reading her thoughts, says that this is the beauty's destiny. You shouldn't hang your nose because there may even be a chance to get back to your place after completing the mission. A drop of hope lights up in the eyes. If you manage to fulfill your promise and correct your mistakes, then you will be able to return. This is the only hope, so I can't believe it will work. The fairy asks in surprise whether the beauty really wants this, who initially thought otherwise. The woman nods once again, saying that she would like to go back. From behind, you can hear the disappointed voice of the prince, who cannot believe that his girlfriend really wants this. He doesn't believe that they want to leave him just like that, without any thought. The blonde turns sharply, trying to prove something. She asks why the boy returned so quickly, but he again says that he wants to know where exactly his friend is going to go. She never even mentioned a word. Noticing what the man brought with him, the heroine is surprised that it is fish and not meat, but she also sincerely admires it. Any attempts remain ignored because he needs to know the truth. You can't leave a friend completely alone after everything that happened between them. The girl says she will explain, but nothing ends there. The brunette still holds her by the shoulders so tightly that it is impossible to unhook, and she has to scream at the top of her voice because of the pain that rises up her body, taking over her mind too. Half an hour passed. The duo sits on logs near the fire. The girl looks somewhere to the side with her most offended look, while the guy does not want to talk to her. Everyone is waiting for food, but no more, because there is nothing more to talk about. The great fairy decides to diffuse the situation a little. She asks the children to apologize and make peace with each other. Everyone is already hungry, but to make the appetite even better, it will be good to talk about the problems that have accumulated. Friends usually solve everything right away, as needed. Jumping up from his seat, the brunette assures that they didn't even quarrel. The blonde's face shows all the anger because the impudent person behaved inappropriately. She remembers that she came from another world where she was no longer a child. So, as an adult, she must decide what to do next. Approaching closer to the fire on which the fish is being fried, the heroine invites His Highness to put aside grievances and talk normally. He turns away and remains silent. I have to restrain my anger inside, reminding him that this is just a stupid child. Grabbing one of the fish, the girl hands it to the guy. He shouldn't be hungry because he doesn't deserve it, just because of some problems between them. While eating, the boy lowers his head again, asking for the millionth time where his girlfriend is going to go. It's not hard to say because it won't do anything bad. The young man just wants to know where his friend is going and why they can no longer be together. Lowering her eyes and trying to concentrate on what needs to be said, the beauty asks His Highness if she can leave. The brunette did not want to press so mercilessly because, in fact, he has other things to do, but it is important for him to know if he can go with her. There is no point in being on your own when no one else cares or loves you. The girl clenches her hand into a fist in anger, but tries to hide it. Of course, he is asking for the impossible, without fully realizing it. A man should get his happy ending with the main character in this world. He realizes that he cannot do the same. If she can't do the same as Daisy, then she shouldn't leave. Tears appear in the eyes that cannot be removed from the eyes, while the baby looks inside the soul. He doesn't want to be left because after all the months of friendship, it has grown into affection. The girl tries to restrain herself, but it's difficult. She is just the daughter of a terrible witch, so she doesn't understand why the prince clings to her so desperately. The person was brought into a new reality only because of mistakes made, and because before that she wrote angry comments, accusing the author of a bunch of cliches. Realization comes to mind. If you have to pay for mistakes, then this means that you need to get rid of those shortcomings that readers did not like in reality in the novel. It has already become clear that this is a calling that is worth fulfilling for yourself. It will be possible to return home only if you turn the obvious flow of events into an unpredictable one. This is just a theory, so it's worth testing how it will work, and nothing more. Daisy can't leave things as they are without checking. The boy tries to reach out to his girlfriend, but she doesn't seem to hear him, being somewhere in another world covered with glass. The blonde turns to the great fairy, for whom she has one important question. My head is spinning, so everything around me is floating. The baby doesn't understand why the words come out of her throat with difficulty and tries to hold her breath despite the fact that even this doesn't help much. The body falls exhausted to the ground, where Dianelle catches it. Several more tens of minutes passed. The girl was shifted onto something soft and covered with a blanket. Both look worried, but they just have to wait until things get better. She will wake up soon, so the fairy advises the boy to go eat for now. Shaking his head in denial, the brunette turns away. He is sure that the beauty is also hungry, so he is not going to do anything until she wakes up. Having fainted, the maiden did not have time to try anything that had been prepared. The blonde rests her cheek on her hand as a sign of the boredom that grips her. Dianelle is truly a stubborn man, the likes of which the world has never seen. Surely he will be interested to know the story of Daisy, who is hiding behind the little body. The brunette expresses his interest, but just as quickly says that he can easily wait until his friend is ready to tell him everything. He's hard as a rock no matter what, so it just means he's being honest when he says something like that. This man is very reminiscent of the same main character that Daisy was talking about. He is no different from him, because he is exactly the same brave, caring, and attentive. The fairy knew that there was something strange about the blonde from the very beginning she arrived at this spring, and it could not be denied. She exuded the same energy as the other outsiders who came to the lake before her, but she was more pleasant. The girl is different. It seemed strange that the heroine continued to consider Dianelle the main character. Every person is the main character in their life, but for some reason Daisy believes that the character who is more important than all the others is her friend, completely forgetting about herself. The boy is distracted from his thoughts by starting to think out loud. He believes that there must be a reason why the beauty does not tell him anything, because he has no other options left. The young man is angry about what is happening, but does not want to seem weak. The girl laughs a little and then asks if he knows that her friend was a little different from him from the very beginning, which wasn't that strange. I don't want to talk about this. One day the lady simply became different, and this was immediately felt almost clearly. It all happened when they met in the forest near Cerberus. Memories remained of how Daisy mocked the boy, but then something changed in her head and in her life. That day, the girl finally smiled and began to help the guy, since she could not afford it before. There was a strong feeling as if then her soul had exchanged with someone else, about whom much more information was not known. The guy realizes that he has nothing left to do. He has no idea how to solve the problem that has arisen, because he is even more scared than before. You won't be able to escape, no matter how hard you try. Only now it became clear that it would be bad as soon as Daisy's new soul returned to her old body. It is clear that the old Daisy acted very differently and would not try to befriend someone she knew and bullied for a very long time. The main character is scared to imagine how he will be completely alone. He had no other friends or even acquaintances, so it is clear that this could be the final end for someone like him. He desperately grabs the palm of his girlfriend, who is sleeping peacefully. Forcing him out of his thoughts, the young man hears the great fairy addressing him. She doesn't know which method is sure to help, but Daisy doesn't want to be disturbed. If a man treats a girl better, she will not want to leave and will remain in this world forever. The boy must do everything possible to prevent his girlfriend from going anywhere. It could take days, it could take weeks, but no one knows what the ending will be that will work. The brunette looks at his interlocutor in surprise. It became clear only after a while what was really important to do in order to get what he himself deserved. The hero promises himself that he will do everything possible so that the beauty does not want to leave. The girl will be able to be convinced very soon, so the man mentally prepares himself for this. The virgin woke up in the morning and sits on the grass to stretch. She is asked about her health and whether she got enough sleep last night. A friend stands in front of the beauty, holding in his hands a new portion of fish that can be used for breakfast. He smiles as if nothing happened yesterday. The blonde thinks she's still asleep, so her mouth drops open in defeat. Laughing lightly, the young man says that this is reality, and then asks him to get up and wash himself so he can start eating. Yesterday the lady didn't try anything because she fainted, but the dishes were truly delicious. The new portion will be there for next time, so for now the baby is holding out what he made yesterday. They are already cold, but if you heat the fish on the fire again, it's scary to think that you can dry them out, completely ruining the dish. Daisy is left to wait all alone. Dianelle is going to go catch more so that they have a small supply to eat. The baby is still sitting with round eyes because she cannot believe what is happening. Before leaving, he asks you to close your mouth so that a fly does not fly into it. The great fairy woke up just in time. The beauty immediately began to ask what happened to the prince, because if you compare him with yesterday's version of yourself, these are two different people. It can be assumed that the behavior is related to the stress he is experiencing. Looking at the figure that is slowly moving away into the forest along the path, the heroine chuckles. The guy didn't go crazy, but simply decided that he would act according to this plan. For now, it's difficult to get used to, but over time, everything should be much easier and better. Most likely, the hero just really wants to stay close to his friend and make sure that she does not reject him as someone who does not deserve her love. The boy wants to stay close and be needed, at least for someone. I would like to know more about Daisy. The beauty asks whether she wants to go back or not, but the answer remains exactly the same as the day before. There is no such confidence in the eyes anymore, so all is not lost. Of course, if the lady fails to move to her world, then she will have to adapt to survival in this world, but hope dies last, so you need to go to the end. The fairy believes that her friend is wise beyond her years, since she has such a position. In this case, the best option is to provide assistance. The girl cannot say anything about the fact that she does not need it, so she nods her head immediately after she is offered to study pharmacology. The fairy will become the first teacher. Although the girl belongs to Ludkiln, she has good potential in herbs. The woman will become the beauty's guide to a world that has not yet been explored. Jumping on the spot, the beauty says that this is a great deal, which she agrees to. The blonde thought she was told something bad, but in fact it was just a great idea, and the girl wanted to express how happy she was. She doesn't say anything else, just smiling silently. I can't believe that it will be possible to prepare medicines with the help of Kalia's knowledge and the teachings of someone whom I never even had the opportunity to meet. The blonde can already imagine how busy she will be and how much new knowledge she will gain over time. Even if the beauty fails to return to her world, she is now sure that she will not die of hunger due to lack of knowledge and work. Only half an hour has passed, but screams can be heard literally throughout the entire forest asking why the prince is doing this to his girlfriend. The little girl is annoyed that her constant acquaintance does not see the particular problem that lies in this. After it becomes clear, the young man hangs his head dejectedly, muttering something about how he didn't know what was bothering everyone so much. It seems that what was said became too harsh an attack because the baby is ready to cry. He believes that he no longer likes Daisy, who behaves completely differently compared to how she used to be. He's confused by the way things are, and he's angry. If the main character begs for forgiveness like this and tries to say something, the lady will become completely powerless and give up. She doesn't want to be bothered, but saying bad things is also not the best option that presents itself. Sitting down on the cool grass, the beauty enjoys the silence that hangs between them. She needs rest, but talking is the most important thing. Starting tomorrow, the lady will be taking some lessons so he can't interfere, distracting him with his presence. The lady cannot understand how many times she has been told something similar lately, but even now, the boy promises that he will not interfere. Just in the past day, the lady had heard repeated promises from him that contradicted himself. The fairy smiles because she has been watching the unfolding picture all this time. The two seem to be very close, despite the differences they have. The blonde missed the moment when the meaning of close became so expanded. Daisy recovered from her fainting spell, but for some reason Dianelle, who gets in the way, tries to please, has changed. This is really annoying, but after attempts that have become unsuccessful, the only thing left to do is remain silent. From the day the heroine fainted exactly a week ago, the boy began to take an interest in everything she did. Previously, he minded his own business, but now he asks about absolutely everything that is happening. The guy gives himself completely to the girl, trying to play a good character. He looks into her eyes, praising her for studying on her own, sometimes talking about how beautiful she is, and now he promises that he will leave her alone and look for something tasty for lunch. Every action takes place with a wild sparkle in the eyes. Before leaving, the hero asks to wait just a little, even if the beauty gets bored. Pulling her hand back, the girl grimaces. She doesn't understand why she should say something like that, especially out loud, and this makes her completely disgusted. He starts talking nonsense. After the prince left, the fairy asked the student if she was okay. Shaking her head, the heroine asks about the reason why her friend behaves this way. The blonde isn't sure, so she simply suggests finishing their lesson as soon as possible. Night came, which came very quickly. The girl is sleeping, but opens her eyes because she hears the muffled voices of the great fairy and Dianelle. At first, it is not clear what they are talking about, since only fragments of phrases reach their ears. The boy says that he seems to be getting tired of Daisy, to which the girl assures him that he should just keep trying. It is worth showing attentiveness and that he is constantly listening and also not interrupting. If you are more gentle with your friend, the matter should end successfully. He also hears advice about politely repeating everything that is said to him and not forgetting what is important and what is not. The little girl never understood the point because her thoughts were focused on finding the reason why they were talking in the middle of the night. It doesn't matter what happens because the heroine was very sleepy. In the morning, waking up, she stretches and goes to the fire. Dianelle is sitting there, so I have to ask what will be for breakfast. He already has 2 fish in his hands. Virgo is interested in what exactly, but he asks in a strange voice what exactly. The reaction was really not what it should have been, but the lady decided not to think. The gaze focused on the fried fish, which beckons with its aroma. The maiden had no idea then that this was the beginning of strange behavior that would follow for days. The smile was a very obvious clue that could not be deciphered. After a hearty lunch, the beauty leans back on the grass, saying that she has eaten too much. It seems as if your stomach will burst a little more, undressing at the seams. The guy just repeats the last words spoken by his friend, without concentrating on anything. The girl can't hold back anymore, so she just asks directly what's going on. The boy continues to repeat every word, while looking with innocent eyes, similar to someone who has been abandoned. Even after the lady asked why they kept repeating after her, they repeated after her again, which obviously drove her crazy. I want to start screaming, but my own voice sounds in my head over and over again, saying that this is just a child who cannot control himself. The young man clutches his wand and asks what is strange about his behavior. He wants to know what's strange about him in general, but he doesn't understand how he can accept the answer he's given. You want to know everything at once, but the atmosphere becomes disgusting, hanging over your soul. The guy hears only silence in response, so he begins to repeat the same thing. He doesn't want to seem annoying, but it seems like this is the only normal way to find out. Taking a few steps back, the beauty tries to restrain herself, but again, it is too difficult for her. She clears her throat and, lowering her voice, says that she is frightened by the changes in her friend's voice and the way he behaves. When the hero scared Daisy, She always told him to smile in order to diffuse the situation, so even this time he plans to follow the advice. Baring his snow-white teeth, the young man begins to smile, further asking if everything is okay now. The face was extremely scary, so now the lady first fainted. She woke up after a while, trying to arrange the moments in her head. I don't remember that the heroine ever lost consciousness before falling into the girl's body. The body is indeed very weak, and this is immediately noticeable. The fairy standing nearby is happy that the beauty has finally woken up. Dionel once again went hunting, although he promised that he would return very soon and with their dinner. She is still very fragile, and this shows to those around her. It bothers them both. The woman recalls that she was just about to start preparing the first batch of medicines that would be poured into jars. If you wish, you can even make one serving for Ludkuln who needs it. The baby is so weak that she cannot even study on her own. It will be helpful to drink an energy supplement so that she can also exercise. Without strength, sometimes you don't even want to read books. I remember what the girl heard from doctors on a regular basis, even in the past world. Everyone unanimously said something about the need to replenish your health reserves. Otherwise, the body ultimately won't even thank you for it. The prince arrived just in time. This time, he took Cerberus with him so that the journey would not take too long. We managed to find some berries, but to make sure that they are edible, it is better to ask the Great Fairy, who knows the forest better than anyone else. Attention turns to Daisy, because if she wants, she can also take a look to check. The girl should at least try to determine the type of berries and whether they are poisonous. If something goes wrong, a friend, of course, will come to the rescue so as not to leave her alone. The prince brings the food closer to his friend, who puts on a smart face, as if she is starting a difficult thought process that can no longer be stopped. After a few seconds of thinking and remembering stories from books, the lady throws the plant aside, saying that it is a snake strawberry. Once the fruits are ripe and red, good medicine can be made from the roots and vines, and then used as a treatment for the sick. The fairy admires the girl's skills. Mountain and snake strawberries are very similar, so it is quite difficult to distinguish them. But the girl managed to understand everything almost immediately, which is even a little strange. Unlike the first type, the second does not have thorns on the vine, making it easy to harvest the fruit. The boy standing nearby puts his hand on the top of his friend's head and expresses his surprise to her. He is proud of the beauty she has made herself into, and she must have studied very hard, even if it was difficult for her. This is the key ingredient for the restoration potion. The girl is ready to study even more just to earn a living later. In any case, the fairy wanted to look for the berry, so they were lucky. Daisy is very weak, so in addition to the drug, she needs to train more to build muscle. Orsinium assumes that this is because he will have to hunt, but in this case, he can get more food, which will definitely be enough for everyone. The reason is completely different, because so far the heroine is faced with only the task of studying books. The girl is so fragile that it will be difficult for her to even study the large volume of books that will be given to her. The brunette nods his head in agreement, even if he really has no idea what he needs to learn to become so exhausted. You can see from the eyes that something completely different is on your mind. The heroine knows that she is too weak, but does not want to be talked about in public because she is ashamed. The fairy says that in this case, Daisy will start training today, because there is no point in postponing things much further. The beauty immediately agreed and began to study, but after half an hour, she was lying on the ground without any feelings. The brunette leans closer, asking if the friend is okay because he is very worried about her. It's strange that the guy is completely fine, but the girl herself feels as if very soon she will no longer withstand such pressure. She is offered water and immediately has to agree in order to stay alive. The woman decides to leave the children alone so as not to disturb them. In silence, I want to know why His Highness behaved so strangely a little earlier. The boy sighs and realizes that he will have to tell what was really in his head at that moment. As it turned out, he just wanted to be a little kinder to the one who was always there for him, no matter what. I had no experience before, so I had to try as hard as possible, even if it didn't always work out well. It's not clear why everything happened so suddenly. It seems the boy used to be too rude when he tried to say something and always did something wrong. Because of what was happening, He had unnecessary thoughts that were best removed. The man is truly sorry for this behavior, and he does not understand why he could not have tried to change himself a little earlier. Now he regrets that he was too cold with those who treated him well. What is being done even now cannot be described as something good, but in this case it is better to explain it a little more simply, because in front of the heroine is a child. The girl is trying to figure out a way out of this situation. The character has never been treated kinder before, so he has no idea what it's like when someone makes the first move. Deciding to show reality with actions, the beauty extends her hand and puts it on the brunette's palm. It's small gestures like these that mean you're kind. In order for a person to feel needed, you just need to be nearby and hold his hand on an ongoing basis. If something goes wrong, he will always know that there are loving people who will always be there. To give love, you need to light a fire, heal wounds, help drink medicine, and stay close. It dawned on the Virgin that she had repeatedly done all of the above for Dionel in an attempt to make his imprisonment a little less disgusting. The boy listens and then smiles brightly, because he only now understands that the beauty has always been very kind to him, despite how he behaved from the very beginning. The blonde nods to confirm her words, but other thoughts are already appearing in her head, making it difficult to focus on everything else. She thinks about how handsome the boy is, but immediately asks herself to think about the fact that he is not yet the adult version of himself, as in the story. First of all, the hero must stop behaving so strangely and unpredictably, because it does not help him. He must return to his old behavior, which suited the beauty quite well. The promise has already been made. The guy hopes that if he does everything as his girlfriend says, she will eat him one fine day, as she said earlier. The Virgin did not imagine that she would be reminded of that puncture at this very opportune moment. The fairy standing under the water was also surprised when she heard. She didn't expect things like that to be said out loud, but she quickly realized that these are children who can be talked to about things they don't understand. In order not to let him forget, the boy reminds him of what the woman said last time. She can't help herself and drools every time she sees a man who is always next to her, which doesn't make it any easier. I would like to start objecting, but any arguments are over. Beauty remembers how she accidentally blurted out that she wanted this person, but after that the topic was never brought up again, which made it much easier. That day, the little girl decided to argue that she wanted to eat the guy. Remembering all this, I want to run away, because my face is twisted in surprise. If only the lady had thought more freely then, everything would have been better without such incidents. The hero does not believe that this was a blatant lie, therefore lowering his voice by half a tone, he reaches out and places the girl's palm against his cheek. He asks if she would like to eat him, as she promised a little earlier when she said all this. The girl seemed petrified, but after that she decided to get rid of unnecessary thoughts. She sleeps while the boy watches her lie there. The fairy asks a friend where he even read something like this, but as it turned out, it was on the pages of a novel that Prince Gelfus brought with him. That day, Daisy said that the book belonged to her because it was about pharmacology, but the man was more than sure from the very beginning that the novel inside was hidden by the witch's lover. She decided to take the hit herself. The guy thinks that it's too early for a girl to know about the things that adults are talking about, so he didn't believe it. The fairy laughs because the boy says this, as if he himself is aware of this no worse than other teenagers. Frowning, the child says that he is no longer little, so he knows everything, especially in detail. The blonde laughs again, because if only the baby would say that he is not small. Usually older people don't pay attention to such jokes. The brunette turns away because he doesn't want to listen to anything else that is being said to him. The hero believes that he really is no longer the same person who is 10 years old, because no matter how strange it may sound, not a single topic seems unfamiliar to him. The hero seems to know everything in advance, even without studying books, without talking with his parents and everything else. For him, this has always been natural, but in fact, only recently did he realize that this was extremely strange. What is happening makes you feel like a monster that no one can ever care about. He would like to find someone who would love him and who would be good enough to hear the real story. A woman standing nearby asks if this was the reason why the boy put on this performance that he had to watch. He tried his best to flirt with her and now asks her not to tell her anything so as not to spoil the impression. The blonde promises that the girl won't find out anything, but if he continues to pretend to be naive and not knowing anything, it won't help anyone. A young man must try to the last to build his life in the right way and take the right path. If nothing changes, over time Dianel will feel guilty for fooling Daisy, who did not deserve it. It doesn't matter to him what feelings there will be, because there are much more important things. What is more important is that the man will never be alone again. He is not going to let go of his girlfriend, who showed him what it means to be loved and receive the right dose of care from a loved one. He simply has no other choice. The main character really feels sorry for the boy who drooped. He is emotionally dependent and obsessed with the desire to receive love from other people, which he previously did not receive at all. It's strange to think about his future without pulling yourself together. The guy's heartstone was supposed to be bright red, falling out of feelings, but dark energy oozes from it, which is not going to disappear so easily. In order not to grieve in vain, the lady goes to look at the future of her 2 children. It seems that everything will be fine for them. Dianel would never harm Ludkiln, even if he lost his mind. No one is capable of something like that, especially at such a young age. He will protect his girlfriend to the last from everyone else who wants to harm and hurt her. At first, it seemed that the curse sent by Kalia had been lifted, but in fact the hero was simply suppressing it with all his might in order to remain within himself and remain calm. The pure desire to be close to your beloved helps a lot. The beauty leans over and pokes her finger at the guy's back, who doesn't seem to have heard what exactly she was trying to tell him. The great fairy just wants to check something, and for this, she needs to carry out a procedure, taking away a piece of power. The boy turns around and asks what went wrong, but receives silence in response. Dark energy gathers in one place instantly, and this place is where the girl touched just a few seconds ago for good purposes. The pain comes almost instantly. The brunette falls to the ground, writhing from the pain that haunts him and from which it never gets any easier. The body is compressed more and more, so you have to grab the grass with your hands in order to somehow lighten your load. A dark force can be seen around the hand that the beauty pulled away. The witch must have cast a spell on the prince that caused him to turn into a beast. Unfortunately, it is impossible to pull out every last bit of the curse from the body at once, but for now it is obvious that this will be more than enough. We can only hope that the baby will find peace wherever he goes, and will always feel that way if he truly loves Daisy. We manage to help the children, and then we need to leave their lives to their own devices. Her Highness sits in her office, monotonously sorting through the papers she is working on. The maid reminds him that it is already late. Everyone knows that the Queen is a busy person, but everyone is still worried about her condition. The woman promises that as soon as she finishes reading, she will immediately go to bed. Dreams have been getting stranger and scarier lately, and what's worse is that you can't get rid of them. The piece of paper again says that even though the guild searched the entire forest, they found nothing. Disappointment appears on your face almost immediately. It seems that the heroine expected too much. After what she heard about the experience of searching for missing persons, she had to hire those guys who ultimately failed. I want to know where Dianel is, because when the woman found out that he was alive, she was incredibly happy about this news. Even in her nightmares, Her Highness could not imagine that the search would take so long. She hoped it wouldn't be a problem, but days and then weeks passed, and nothing changed. The same maid who left about 5 minutes ago bursts into the room. She asks for forgiveness, but the news is definitely worth attention. As it turned out, Crown Prince Gelfus died quite recently, and on this occasion everyone is gathering for a council. The royal magicians made sure that this was true, and even after that, some people cannot stop believing the nonsense they are told that he is alive. Everyone knows that the man is not one of those people who could just die like that after everything he tried to do. The boy's magical energy was great, so no one knows how it happened. The former king also died in the abandoned forest, so many aristocrats come to the conclusion that something is wrong there. The reasoning, which raises a ruckus in the hall, is interrupted by the voice of a servant, who announces that Her Highness has arrived. The door swings open, and the Queen appears there in her snow-white and, as always, beautiful attire. The royal search team of magicians came to the conclusion that the body found in the forest belonged to the crown prince, who had recently disappeared again. For him, this was something ordinary, but not this time. Conversations begin again. It could be the energy of the earth or something that could lead to a real disaster. There is no point in speaking incorrectly in the presence of the empress. Unable to withstand the uproar, the woman strikes with the scepter, saying that the energy of the earth of the abandoned forest is in perfect order. Aristocrats do not want to calm down. The former king also died in that cursed place, and the maiden herself knows how strong the power of the crown prince who disappeared was. A woman has no right to say that this is just a coincidence. She also thought it was strange, so she had to ask the search team to observe the soil. Ultimately, the group came to the conclusion that everything was fine. They did not find anything terrible, and in order not to waste time, the beauty decided that it would be best to accept reality. If the man standing nearby objects, it means he is against the queen and her search team of magicians. The behavior is not at all what it should be, so the green-haired one immediately apologizes for what he did. The man who had just spoken was supporting the prince. Now his position is extremely unstable, and the extra quarrel with the queen only proved how much more problems will appear over time. After the death of Orsinium, the nobles could not come to an agreement. One side supported Gelfus, whose magical power became more powerful every day. It was the right choice for them. The other side firmly hoped that Dionel was still alive, and that he was the heir to the royal family. The older and younger generations of aristocrats split into two warring camps, who did not want to seek compromises regarding the rule of the parties. The death of Gelfus was a chance for the reunion of those gathered, and on top of that, it turned out that the heir was alive. The parties have no options other than the cooperation that is offered to them. Those who were enemies will soon become allies. The place of prince and successor will remain vacant for some time. The men in the audience begin to whisper, suggesting that this is like a preservation for Dionel, who, in truth, remained alive. The Duke will have to change tactics to stay alive. He asks the Queen a question first, who is happy to answer. I usually saw right through people, so this wouldn't be a big problem. Debalcian asks why the Crown Prince went into the forest. No logical explanations were found, since the place is truly dangerous. Many people know that there are monsters there that can eat people alive. The blonde looks at the man, who falls silent. The Duke is not a nice person, and she had already heard that he had become increasingly arrogant since Orsinium's power began to grow. He was trying to carry out his plans, which so far were not working as they should. After the death of the prince, the guy began to seek the queen's favor, so he is not wasting any time. Smiling, the girl says that she is also curious to know why the young man went there without the protection of several knights, which are usually used. The Virgin asks the others for their thoughts on what is happening, and one of the aristocrats remembers that it is in this forest that the spring of the Great Fairy is located. He had heard that this place, marked on an ancient map, was now called an abandoned forest. There is a legend that says that magical power increases when you drink the morning dew from the Great Fairy's spring. The goddess, who fell in love with man, was demoted to the level of a fairy, and, having descended into the human world, she created her home in a place that is now called the Spring. I can't believe that the heir actually found the source of the Great Fairy. If this is true, then it would explain the reason why his magical power had increased so much in a short period of time. The girl is completely immersed in her thoughts and paints a picture of what could have happened there. It would be best to go and see for yourself the reality of what is happening. A slight cough brings thoughts back to reality. One of the men says that it would be better to look at the Great Fairy's spring again, but only closer, in order to understand what to prepare for next. The others in the room support his idea, which doesn't seem all that terrible. The brunette heard that there have been a lot of monsters there in recent days, so it's time to go and drive them out to free the lady living there. Someone heard that the former crown prince died from the bite of a monster that was spotted there. The votes are mixed into one because they don't matter as much as they used to before the discussion begins. The blonde remembers very well how almost everyone in this room was against her and supported the enemy a little earlier, before his death. Now they try their best to gain favor. The heroine promises that she will go to the forest as soon as possible. She orders to gather troops that will be with her and prepare to search everything far and wide, just to find that very treasured place. They have a lot of work to do. It's only been a year, but Daisy has already grown noticeably. She has become a wonderful girl who watches the animal run into the distance through the forest without even turning around. She looks carefully at the one standing in front. The beauty smiles, calling His Majesty. She managed to catch her first prey, even if it wasn't exactly easy. The young man stands behind with a proud smile on his face, which expresses all his feelings about the student. The heroine managed to create a perfume to attract herbivores, and now she is also proud of herself. In response to all the compliments, she says that this is not a problem for a witch, especially one like her. The woman, of course, is still a beginner, but she is no longer so unreasonable that she does not understand exactly what is being done and how. After the battle with Kalia, the beauty studied the materials left behind and spent a year learning from the great fairy how to properly make medicine. It would be great if she returned to the world she came from. Sometimes in my dreams, I could see moments where I was able to calmly go about my business upon returning back to that dimension. But every morning began the same way when the lady woke up. Just in case, she decided to prepare herself for life in a new reality. If she never managed to return back, she would have to earn her own living, so this was how she managed to convince herself that this was incredibly important. In addition, the blonde began to train regularly, so now she can easily run 2 laps around the spring of the Great Fairy, which she is incredibly happy about. Everything is going as well as possible, even if only 1 year has passed since entering the new world. The biggest change was that it was now hard to differentiate between the real me and Daisy, who used to live in this body since birth. Sometimes it's scary, and sometimes it's confusing, but you always have to move forward. This means that the heroine has adapted to life in this world, so this is probably something good. The fairy greets the guys who, in her opinion, have returned, even too early, so she is surprised. A smile appears on her face as she invites them through the barrier. The animal was caught very easily, only thanks to the sedative that Daisy skillfully prepared. The prince himself would have to tinker with this much longer, so he can only be grateful for what he has. The girl immediately checks the book to see where exactly she left off. A friend asks how her training is going and receives a positive answer, because it seems like it's quite fun to do this kind of thing. Even taking into account the fact that the heroine is from the Ludkoln family, perhaps her skills are the same as those of a magician who graduated from the academy, but she simply cannot be content with this because her family does not have the right to use force. In any case, you will have to live like an ordinary person. It will be necessary to pretend that nothing is known in pharmacology and herbal medicine, so that no one finds out about it, even by accident. Nodding her head, the interlocutor agrees with the proposals. This is all because the magicians of the royal palace in Orsinium have permission to treat people. Only they have the right to do at least something in relation to the rest of those in need. If a person uses magic for healing and is not associated with the palace, people will think it is strange, and then just start whispering behind their backs. Obviously, many people find this strange. The blonde exhales in disappointment. She loves pharmacology and has been studying all its aspects for a year because creating medicines is very interesting. I want all the doors to be open, but this will never happen. The fairy reminds us of what is usually said and what people are usually called outside the forest in which they are located. Those who are not associated with the capital are witches, and this is not the best option for someone to turn into. The memory of the most evil of them immediately comes to mind, and it is none other than Kalia. She lived in an abandoned tower and was scary to others. Daisy would have been named exactly the same if the opportunity had arisen. Of course, if a girl becomes a witch, then it will be much easier for her to fulfill her destiny, but this is still not a solution. We also have to remove clichés, but this will need to be done in an honest way, which will take some time. The fairy sincerely hopes that her ward will not express a desire to become a witch only for this reason, because this cannot but upset her. Witches are those whose existence is frowned upon by high society. They are considered villains who poison the aristocrats. The heroine cannot fully believe that such people are looked down upon, no matter how hard they try to fulfill their duty. There is no need to worry so much, because in any case, A friend is not forcing you to decide right now. One day you will still have to make a decision, even if it is quite difficult. A girl must try and choose the path that will suit her. The conversation is interrupted by a friend who waves his hand with all his might to point to something he managed to see. He found something interesting that was worth Daisy's attention. She does not immediately understand what exactly we are talking about. Walking the beauty to a small pond, the guy points out a beautiful fish with golden scales that almost glows from how beautiful it looks in the sun. I can't believe they managed to discover something so wonderful in the middle of the forest. It is impossible for something like this to be done with your own hands, because this is a spring goldfish. They act as guides for witches and nothing more, but they have great significance and beauty that can be envied. If they meet a witch they like, they jump out of the water as if asking to be taken with them. A gurgle is heard behind them, but both of them for the time being do not pay any attention to it. The boy points his finger, asking if this is really what is happening, watching the fish crawl out of its skin. It looks like the baby wants to be taken with her to the spring lake by the fairies. Daisy is also a witch, albeit in training. She is sure that if she becomes like this, being from her kind, people will be even more against it than they usually express their dissatisfaction. All that remains is to try to restrain yourself. Ludkuns and witches are not welcome in this world, but putting them together means more problems. It's scary to imagine what the beauty might expect in a while, so she's afraid. A girl with sparkling eyes watches the fish, which continues to actively jump from side to side. She promises that she will lead and show her best, only hoping that she will find a new owner. Arriving at the ferry, the girl received a smaller version of that same fish, but only in a pendant. She believes that she will become a magnificent witch, and all she has to do is agree with her in order to hear praise. Listening to the conversation, the young man just smiles lightly. The woman notices that her friend is worried and doesn't even try to hide it anymore. There are no big problems in this, because she is not the only one who is worried about how things are going for her in general. You need to think about how things will be. The heroine knew that Daisy was very smart and developed beyond her years. If things get difficult, she can always start leading a normal life, simply forgetting about her past as a magician with powers. A friend will always be happy to see her near the source and will always support her. A man interrupts to ask Ludkoln if everything will really be all right. He hopes he gets the positive response he deserves. Of course, the friend makes good luck, but life can become quite difficult for a lady once she becomes a witch, because of money and because of people who will constantly get in the way. Dianelle is genuinely concerned, and that's normal when you love someone. The boy was bullied by Kalia for a long time, so he, of course, does not like the fact that the woman is going to become a witch. When you mention someone similar, the image of the very person who wanted to do this to him will always pop up in your head. The girl decides to go to the end, so she folds her hands and looks into her eyes while trying to seem sincere. She really wants to become who she dreams of. It won't be that easy, but it's actually not the worst option. Even if a friend doesn't like it, this does not mean that his opinion applies to others. A smile appears on your face, which speaks for itself. In fact, everything will be fine, and the young man is sure that his girlfriend will become an excellent witch, because there is not a single obstacle on her way that prevents her from crossing the border. There is a fairy walking around who literally begins to celebrate when she realizes that the student has decided to become someone in the future and is now 100% sure of it. If everything goes as it should, it's worth celebrating with a wonderful dinner. Daisy fell asleep almost immediately after eating, but the young man was never able to understand what rest was. Sitting by the fire, he looks at the bright flames playing with the logs. He thinks about what happened, and when the lady asks something, he realizes that he cannot hide anything. The boy cannot immediately formulate what exactly is in his soul, but he tries to do it with all his might. The fairy understands that he only hopes that the girl will change her mind and choose a more successful path to achieve her goal. The hero doesn't really worry much because there are other wounds in his soul as well. He remembers what was said exactly a year ago. The boy knows a lot without making any special effort, so there is no point in him studying hard. Most likely it is precisely because of this that the hero feels complacent, since no problems have ever arisen. He doesn't understand how others can spend hours and hours trying to achieve something while skipping other activities. When the hero saw how hard his girlfriend was studying, he could not contain his feelings, which were slowly eating away at him. It seemed that it was something like envy that does not leave the body until you receive the treasured thing. The young man begins to talk and can no longer stop because he really envies what his friend has and the fact that she has found something to do that she likes, which you can do all day long when you are bored, but there is nothing. The brunette is jealous that there is something that makes it impossible to get tired of. He doesn't know how else to express his thoughts about what is happening. Dionel obviously doubts his abilities, and this is clear from the first second of the story. I can't believe that the young man realized this only by watching Daisy, who didn't even want to give unnecessary reasons for envy. Now he seems more upset than he was before, and it will be difficult to cheer him up. The heroine always shines brightly when she is studying and looks so alive that you want even more of this. The blonde seems to become another version of herself, but completely different, 100% different. Compared to his girlfriend, the prince is much worse, so he is already starting to ask questions. He's not sure if he can be around such a wonderful person like her. I really want to become a worthy friend for someone who works so hard and who tries to achieve the best. Almost instantly, a good idea comes to mind that can be used. Soon, everything will change for the better. Achieving what you want will be a little difficult, but it will be worth it to get started. Looks like today the stars will shine brighter than ever just for this man who is happier than ever. The woman looks somewhere into the distance. The Empress finally goes to find her son, and it is an event that will change all reality for this little union. The fairy can't wait for the best to happen. Several days passed that dragged on too long. Dionel, as usual, has been sitting near the lake since the morning to talk with his friend. She already knows what will happen in a matter of minutes, so she constantly turns around. A woman's voice calls Dionel, but he looks with horror at all those who have appeared. He believes that His Majesty showed up on his own, along with his knights. She looks with a stony gaze at her son, who immediately jumps up from his seat. The great fairy adjusts herself and then nods in response, saying that the woman has finally arrived. The blonde turns away from looking at the baby and bows her head in greeting to someone she has never seen in person before. It seems that these were not fairy tales, and the magical creature still exists, and it seemed like she was the one who had been taking care of the boy for almost the entire year. She notes that the group has been looking for a place with a lake for quite some time, and then chuckles at how things are going in general. A whirlwind of beautiful flowers appeared in her hands. Handing each one copy, the beauty asks to smell them to find out the whole truth. It sounds absurd, but this will help restore memory and transfer all memories from one to another. Tears begin to appear on his cheeks, while the baby sees what happened to his father and mother. The queen also cannot help herself from the way her child was treated, kept all this time in a hut without the right to care. Stretching out his arms, the guy calls his mother and throws himself on her neck so that he can hug. He never thought that something like this could happen, and he never thought that he would be able to meet his true parents at least once again. The girl hugs the boy, and then carefully examines his face to get used to the reflection. In the memories that the fairy showed, my mother had beautiful golden hair and kind eyes. No matter how strange it may be, it seems to the young man more as if the heroine's hair turned white because she lost first her husband and then her son, whom she loved very much. Quietly muttering something, the heroine finally says that the guy looks like his father, just like his heart of stone. Mom shouldn't be sad as long as the one she loves the most is by her side. She will agree, because on such a joyful day she has no right to be the one who cries. Now they are together, which means that it no longer matters what adversity awaits them next. The beauty calls to the palace, where they will go right now. We need to hurry and complete all the preparations that remain to be carried out. The girl left the palace empty for a year to find her son, and there are many things that urgently need to be done manually. The brunette stops his mother, who is about to leave. I can't believe they have to leave so easily. Mom asks for forgiveness for the fact that only she spoke. In any case, she is too happy to see the boy next to her. The knights are already ready to set off on the long journey back, but before that the beauty simply has to ask if the boy is ready to go with them, but he is strangely silent, showing no signs that he really wants to. Doubt splashes in the eyes, which should be cast aside, but this is actually unrealistic. The young man does not want to leave Daisy because she has become really dear to him lately. Leaving the lake with the fairy, he literally leaves his girlfriend alone. The girl said that she was going to become a witch. She needs to learn from the great fairy, and besides that, she will never be able to be near Dianelle. Not everything is so simple in Orsinium, and no matter how painful it is to think about it, it doesn't change anything at all. She will never be able to become a witch in the royal palace, because she is from the Ludkoln family. She can easily be punished if they find out that she had to study medicine on her own, throwing aside every prohibition set. The queen is not going to give up so easily because she will never leave her child alone again. She assures that if he returns to the palace with her, he will be able to do whatever he wants. One of the options for entertainment and hobbies can be an academy. If the hero tries his best to study there, perhaps he will become a wonderful person, and only then will he be able to stand next to Daisy, as if they were on the same level of development. The boy nods his head in agreement. Before leaving, I want only one thing. Goodbye. The friend left about 10 minutes ago to collect medicinal herbs in the forest, and as soon as she returns, everything can be easily completed. The fairy shakes her head negatively, denying the possibility that she will be able to say goodbye. She opened the barrier temporarily, only so that the arrivals could enter, but it would have to be closed before sunset so that nothing would happen. The worst thing that can happen if you leave the entrance open is an influx of monsters, which you will then be unable to fight off. The knights have no energy left to fight the monsters, so they protest with all their might. They feel bad, so nothing can be done about them. The best option is to give everyone some rest upon arrival at the palace. If nothing works out, then all you have to do is go with the others. Before setting off on the road, the boy wants to write one last letter, which he so desperately wanted to leave for last, so as not to be lost without news. Daisy has a right to know what's going on and doesn't deserve to be treated poorly. Running into the house, the brunette looks for a pen and a piece of paper while trying to hold back the tears that are already in his eyes. When starting to write, the young man first of all asks for forgiveness as sincerely as possible. He didn't want to leave his girlfriend alone, but this was all just for her good. As soon as a friend becomes a wonderful person, he will definitely come back to be close. No longer finding the strength to put aside all his worries, the brunette begins to sob, but writes the last few lines in which he asks himself to protect himself until that very special moment that should come very soon. The baby returned very soon. She has several bunches of grass in her hands, and in order not to be mistaken, the blonde asks the great fairy if this is exactly what she needed in the first place. I wouldn't want to mix it up by accident. This is an amazing job, and as it turns out, the fish couldn't even find its way. The girl thought that the golden pendant of the spring tree could find a plant that would forgive the owner. It is noticeable on the face of the great fairy as if something is not as it should be. The baby asks what exactly happened but gets no answer. As it turned out, the guy left. He just left a letter and didn't even say goodbye in reality. After reading it, it was as if a hole had formed in my chest that could not be closed. Dianelle said exactly what he wrote in words in the library, but there is nothing on the sheet. This only made it worse, realizing that nothing could be done about it. Ink left on the table disappears over time. The lady was running out of paper, so she added some grass to the ink so that it would evaporate over time. Tears are dripping onto the grass because now it's not even clear what the young man said. The woman promises that she will use magic to find out what was written. There is no need to cry, because now they can look together at what Dianelle wrote on paper. It will be easier for both of them. After it appeared on the piece of paper, many different inscriptions appeared that were impossible to make out. It looks like the paper has been used many times before. The face shows horror that is no longer hidden. The lady is unable to read a word or make out even a particle. The hero asks to be forgiven for leaving, but he himself begged that the girl never leave him. The action was extremely illogical and heartbreaking. The fairy is not obliged to justify her friend, because there is only one conclusion. He left without even saying goodbye, and there is no point in saying anything. It seemed like a girlfriend really didn't mean anything to a man like him. It became clear that hopes were in vain, and chest pain prevented me from moving on with my life. Evening came, and the tearful little girl went to bed. The great power looks straight at her with a sad look and hopes that one day he will be able to tell everything. Daisy feels inferior because Dianelle doesn't have to put effort into anything, and he is jealous because she can work hard. As long as a couple experiences such emotions, a quarrel cannot be avoided. They would make each other miserable for the rest of their lives because of their behavior, which they have no control over. They needed to break up instead of staying close. It hurts to reveal the truth, so the fairy chooses not to. 4 years have passed, and now the girl is already 10 full years old. A letter thrown by an owl flying overhead falls into your face. My nose hurt almost instantly from the light slap. As it turned out, inside there was an invitation from the witches. The Virgin received it from a white owl, which is used for communication, and it means that the beauty was finally recognized as a true sorceress with powers. Everyone knows that one day, when 2 moons rise into the sky and a flame breaks out in a forest covered with a dark swamp, it will become known who will be nearby. We are talking about the winter solstice. The witch moon appears every 10 years, so it becomes clear that the witches have been invited to a meeting that will take place in a year. Since Daisy was invited, she has no right to refuse. She will interact with other people similar to her, which will only give her more experience.